Hi, anyone and everyone. Welcome to Have You Heard About This Case? My name is Sam.
And my name is Kelly.
This likely won't come to a surprise to anyone, but we're back in Wisconsin this week, and we have my sister Ashley joining us.
Hello.
Yay!
Hey, everyone. Sam from the future here. I just wanted to hop on here and kind of just take note of the fact that we had quite a few tech issues during this episode. It came close to not happening. And unfortunately, Ash's audio is a little rough, but we did the best that we could to clean it up. And you also hear her dog playing around in the background a little bit. But we are all very, very excited for this episode. And we hope that you enjoy. Now back to the episode. I am really excited for this episode. It will be a paranormal one. And in addition to the just typical internet research that we typically can do for these episodes, I had the ability to speak to locals and paranormal investigators about their experiences while at this location. And I'm very excited to chat about it. But before we get into it, what is our question for today?
Okay, so I have been excited to record this one because Sam, you've been feeding me breadcrumbs about this, and I know you guys have both had first-person accounts there. I think it's going to be really fun. And since it's paranormal, I want to pose to both you and Ash, which is your favorite cryptid?
Ooh, so I love our local type cryptids in Wisconsin, just like you guys talked about Hodag. But I kind of have a heart for the original, just good old Loch Ness Monster. That Nessie girl, she needs love. She is the first one you've ever learned about, and I just want to hug her big old neck and just tell her, girl, I believe in you.
Yes, we believe in you, girl.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to say the Hodag, just because I really love the story. I know that it's
So
not
funny.
true, but it's just fun.
It's so fun. It's good, clean fun.
It really is.
Yeah, I know we were
Good,
just
clean
talking
fun.
about it before, but I sent you a TikTok that actually Ashley sent me of,
Yeah.
I think it was this year's celebration at some fair in town where they recreated like the reveal of the Hodag for little kids. And it was
I
just
think,
really
County
fun.
Fair. Yeah. At first I saw it and I'm like, I don't remember this being in my local news, so I sent it thinking maybe someone did this as a joke, but no, I think they really did that at our county fair, and that's such a good idea. It was so adorable.
Yeah, I thought it was super cute. Like if you had younger kids,
Yeah.
it looked super fun. They put on a funny little show.
Yeah, they
And
lights
I was
and a
impressed
smoke
by
machine and
Yeah, I was gonna say I was impressed by their fogger. They were like, "This is the Hodag. It's serious. We need to rent a fogger."
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. But what's your favorite, Kelly?
Oh, you guys, this one's easy for me. Mothman.
Oh,
Me
yes.
and Mothman. I have a keychain that I just bought. Shout out real quick. Let me just grab this, girls, because my in-laws are in West Virginia as well. I won't tell you where because that's super creepy. But I have long lobbied for a trip to, I think it's Point Pleasant. Oh, my brother-in-law just told me. I had the name of
I
it
think
wrong
it is
at one
Point
point.
Pleasant because it always makes me think
I
of Point
think it's-
Place from that '70s show.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've long lobbied for a longer trip in West Virginia to go to a Mothman world tour.
Oh, wow. They have
Meaning,
events like
yeah,
Mothman festivals?
Oh,
well,
they have all
a
sorts
big
of stuff.
festival. Big festival, but mainly I want to go to their big statue. You guys have probably seen it.
I've definitely
online.
seen it.
It's
Yeah.
it's insane. It's so wild. It's almost like that blue horse at the Dallas airport. It just looks like a
Right.
Tin Man, Mothman, and so many pictures have so many pictures have been taken with people squeezing his butt that the butt is all shiny.
Oh, jeez.
And I really want to do that. And then I want to go around to like the local vendors because they sell like Mothman cookies, Mothman pizza, you know, just like, and I just bought a awesome keychain of him by Liz Pavlovic is her name, and she is a local West Virginia designer. And she does a lot of cryptid work on Etsy. And I bought a keychain from her that has Mothman laying in the draw me like one of your French girls pose. And it says live, laugh, lurk.
Oh, I love that.
That's perfect.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into our case today. We're going to be talking about the Summerwind Mansion. It's also known as LaMonte Mansion and Lilac Hills. I've been there many times. Ashley, I know that you've been there many times.
Oh, yes.
We've never gone together, which
Yeah,
is
how
kind
is
of
that
odd.
possible? But, I mean, we can make that happen.
I'll say you came on when we did the Paul Ding Light episode, and we were talking about it at that point, too, that we've never been to the Paul Ding Light together, either.
I think there was just enough separation in our ages or, like, different, like, high school groups when everyone did this stuff. And then, like, later after high school, we're like, we did all of the same stuff.
We did. Yeah, we were 4 years apart, so we weren't in high school together at all.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That would make sense then. So both of you kind of discovered, like, this magical place, like, with your own friend groups.
Right.
Well, you told me about Summerwind. You're the one who
Yes.
gave me the directions and everything.
It's like gets passed down because I got it from someone
Nice.
that was like 4 or 5 years older than me in school, and it goes
Yeah.
generationally. And there's no like road
And then
names. It's like 4 lefts after Pine Tree. It's like it's,
Right?
it's awesome.
My kind of direction.
Right. Like
Ash, we bonded about being the older sisters here, and I love the handed down information from older sister to younger sister.
Yes.
Like, here's the local haunted house. Go chill in it.
100%.
So that's exactly what we did. But also,
I love it.
Summerwind is only about 25 miles from the Paul Ding Light. So I know for me and my friends, we would go to both on the same night.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big part of the reason why we just never ended up going together is because it's just kind of like you knock both out at the same time.
Yeah, it was like a round trip thing. It's like if you went, you can get to both things through like different, county highways. So if you take like one county highway in, you hit up one spot, and then you take the other county highway out. It was like doing the big, driving around high school thing that people did. We made a big circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was
Right,
a decent
yeah,
drive
right.
from us too. So it was like we went there a lot, but it was like something that we kind of had to plan. It wasn't like, oh, let's just go to Summerwind tonight.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't plan that. I just went.
Oh, see, we had to plan. I had to coordinate my friends to make sure we could all go.
Oh, no, we were like very impulsive, and we did a lot of things like that. We were sitting down as we watched, I remember watching particularly American Idol when Kelly Clarkson won.
Ha.
And
At Summerwind?
no, we were at a friend's house
Okay.
watching this episode, and she
Okay.
won, and we're like, well, now what do we do with the rest of the night? Let's go to Summerwind. So, yeah, we went to Summerwind.
Yeah.
But fuel was also
Something to
like
celebrate.
$1.10 a gallon, so
Yeah.
happy days.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Back when Smash Mouth asked if they could borrow some change for gas.
Right, no more
And
change.
it actually meant something.
For sure.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I do also really want to note at the top of this episode, like we're talking about the fact that we've gone there. This is private property.
Yeah,
And
100%. No, we're absolutely
condone-
trespassing.
yeah, we don't condone going there. I think now I definitely wouldn't go there without permission.
Right.
So I want to make that known at the top of the episode because
Yeah.
I don't want people just going out there.
And being that I
Okay.
happen
Well,
to
that
work with a
makes
lot
sense.
of law enforcement and people in field and field adjacent, I don't want my friends to arrest me. That's just not
Right.
not cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
or
haven't
have
been in
to-
years up there for that exact reason.
Yeah, me either.
Don't make this the reason Ash meets you.
Right.
Don't do it.
No.
So I'm sure this is going to come out as we go through the episode, but it's good to know that it's currently private property, but I imagine it's probably changed hands for a while? Because I know there's lore here that goes back.
Yes.
Yeah, the current owners have owned it since, I believe, 1986, and we'll get into a lot of those details kind of as we go. But yeah, it hasn't changed hands since then. But
for a while then.
Yeah, for quite a while. But you're right, it has gone through multiple owners throughout the years. So let's dive right into it, and we're going to start by talking about Robert Patterson LaMonte. Robert was born on December 1st, 1867 in Detroit, Michigan. And he would go on to study at the University of Michigan and graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering.
Ooh, smarty pants.
Smart.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Exactly. Smarty pants.
Right after college, Robert got a job as an engineer for the upcoming 1883 World's Fair in Chicago.
Oh, what up?
So kind of a big deal to get into that job right after college.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, little did he know he would be part of a star on our flag.
Right. And in 1984, Robert would marry.
You want 1894, baby.
Yes.
I hate the same thing.
I'm pretty sure this guy's just a time traveler. That's all it boils down to.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Time, it's a flat circle.
Right. So in 1894, Robert married, and by 1900, he had 3 children and had become the vice president of a company named Simplex Railway Appliance Company.
Oh.
And this company was the first to manufacture commercial quantities of steel using an open hearth process, which I'm not going to get into what that all means, but this basically revolutionized the industry. So it's a really big deal that he's working with this company. He's the vice president.
So basically, he's just kind of a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, like, commercial quantities of steel, like, he must have been dealing with, like, probably maybe some good money there. I don't know what it was like in 1900.
He definitely was dealing with some good money. And he would be promoted, and he actually became company president by 1912.
Climbing the ladder, man. Good job.
Yeah, so he definitely was wealthy at this point.
Nice.
Okay. 1900s wealthy, so that's pretty wealthy.
And we'll get into a little bit of kind of the money talk a little bit later here. But you'll see, look, yes, he absolutely had money. And in 1916, Robert decided that he wanted a vacation home in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. So he purchased a large amount of property on West Bay Lake. And this property was formerly a fishing lodge. I believe it had like a main lodge and then a handful of cabins kind of around the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of different reports of how much land he purchased. But the most consistent number I saw was 80 acres. But there were some reports that said it was up to 150 acres. So either way, a ton of land.
Yeah.
So much land. That's a lot. Woo.
Right?
We had room back then.
Yes, we definitely did. And Robert hired 2 well-known Chicago architects, Thomas Talmadge and Vernon Watson. And understandably, Robert would have connections to these architects because he's in the structural steel industry. So he was able to get some of the best of the best.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And Talmadge is well known for his Chicago-style architecture, which is still very prevalent around the city. It's a lot of the brownstones that we see with the big windows in them.
I love them. I'm so glad Chicago's making more of an effort now that they're putting in these new condos to keep the old facing and just gut the interior so we don't lose our architecture. Because some of it's really cool.
It really is.
Yeah, the building I live in is definitely inspired by Talmadge.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, then I can place it in my Okay,
so you know exactly what I'm referencing, which sorry for the rest of you. You don't know where I live and you won't. But If
that's
you know
rare.
Chicago, like downtown is a ton of this Chicago school style, where it's these brick buildings, massive windows, that are very much grid-like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then Watson was well known for his prairie-style architecture and actually teaching Frank Lloyd Wright, who made that style
Wow.
very famous.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. If you're like a teaching Frank Lloyd Wright, wow.
Right? So Talmadge and Watson went to work in Land O'Lakes, and over the next 2 years, they built the lake home for the LaMontes. And there's a lot of different stories with this too, but I feel like I should clarify. I believe that they remodeled the fishing lodge and they didn't actually build a new structure.
Okay.
I don't know if that necessarily adds to the story, but it potentially adds more history to it.
Yeah. Like, is there an older part of the house? I remember my grandmother lives incredibly far north as well, and in an older house. And some of these older houses, there are parts of them like, oh yeah, that part came from, the 1920s. This part came from you know, so that makes sense that maybe they just added on, and there was the older part of the house that was used to be formerly the fishing lodge.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
And this area just as a whole is very, very difficult to build in because it's very rural. It's a lot of dirt roads, really hard to access.
Oh.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to use the existing structure instead of completely knocking it down and redoing everything.
Yeah. Like bringing in new materials would probably be difficult in a lot of situations.
I do know at one point I read that during the construction, they actually had to bring in a lot of materials by boat because it was too hard to get vehicles back there.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
And West Bay Lake, it's a pretty big lake in itself, but it's part of the Cisco chain, which I want to say is 14 lakes that are all connected.
And
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so the property it pulls right up on the lakefront.
Yes,
obviously.
the house
used to be a
itself
fishing
was
lodge.
actually how
So
how
they
far
could have pulled it in.
Would you say the house was from the water? It wasn't far.
It's not very far. It is higher up on like a cliff almost. So like
It is on like a
literally,
steep hill.
it's like you probably literally like up to 20 feet from the water, but the walking up that hill is probably like a 75-foot hill.
Yeah,
Oh, well, so very hard to access for building materials. 'Cause,
exactly.
I mean, water might be your best way, but then you got to go up that hill.
Yeah,
I'm sure they had to do
imagining
like tracks and pulleys.
exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Like I know I haven't seen like evidence of it, but I'm imagining like an old school like pulley system, like getting all this stuff up a hill on like skids.
Yeah.
But by the time the house was completed, it was 2 stories and had 20 rooms and a large stone terrace that looked over the lake.
Oh.
And at the time,
Sounds beautiful.
1916, it cost $125,000 to build. And according to WJFW, that would be nearly $3 million today.
Woo!
So, yes, he was quite wealthy.
Yeah.
I go Robert. I mean, if you got the space and the money and it's the 1900s, build you a manor house because we're going to go hang out in it in
Right.
2024.
They
Actually,
also-
don't. It's private property.
They were antique collectors as well. So they filled the house with
Cool.
antiques, but a majority of their antiques came from Europe. So it was very eclectic,
Oh.
a whole mix of things inside that was very elegant.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
And at the time, Robert would actually become the Secretary of Commerce for the Hoover administration from 1929 to 1932. So,
Wow.
So, again, what Ash said, upvote. He's pretty much a big deal.
Yeah.
he definitely is. And because he would become part of the Hoover administration, he actually had to move to D.C. And I believe this made the Wisconsin home more of a special place to them because they didn't get there as often from Chicago.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, even today, so many
yeah.
people, I feel like, in the city have that coveted Wisconsin retreat. It always seems to be. I think my best friend is there right now.
Nice.
So that's when, like, I've talked about how we grew up in the Chicago area. That's what it was for us before we moved.
Yeah. It's always kind of felt like a special place up here. And I get very, like, humbled by that fact I get to live here.
Mm-hmm. Especially now that I moved away, going back is even more special, I think, because it's so different than my everyday life that I appreciate it even more now that I can go back on occasion.
Yeah.
But over the years, while at the mansion, things get a little bit foggy timeline-wise, but it is reported that nearly immediately after moving in, the LaMonte's housekeeper started to complain, saying that she was starting to hear odd noises and smelling foul odors. And the LaMontes themselves hadn't experienced any noises or smells, and so they just kind of brushed these complaints off. But over time, the LaMonte staff would make similar claims. It wasn't just their one housekeeper.
And I think, Sam, we talked a little bit about, was the staff in a different, like, location in the house?
Yes. So there were a couple outbuildings. So there was, like, the staff quarters where they lived. I'm not sure if some lived in the house as well. It sounds like they had a pretty decent size staff. But I couldn't find specifics.
Yeah, I was going to say, it also kind of tracks that maybe the LaMontes didn't experience anything themselves, but the staff did maybe at one of these outbuildings.
I know when the housekeeper was talking about her experiences, she would say things like she'd saw a woman out walking around the grounds and that sort of thing. So I don't know exactly where things were happening. But minimally
but
just on the property.
Yeah. I was going to say, todos, all of it.
Right.
Haunted.
Yeah, and according to JFW, they ignored these comments from the staff for about 15 years. So this was happening for a very long time.
I was just going to say, wow.
If I was in a job for 15 years and people like my bosses were listening to me, like, dude, I'm being haunted here. I'm like, no, just go continue your job. Do what we hired you to do.
This is also the 1920s.
Yeah, I know. Like, work relations are a little bit different now, but man, 15 years of being haunted and being ignored, that's rough, man.
Right?
God, can you imagine every day at work, you're like, I'm just trying to find the mixing bowl to make you guys dinner, and I'm telling you that I keep hearing weird stuff.
Right?
Like, it's been 15 years, I've been saying it once a year.
Yeah.
Can you...
Well, finally, one night in 1930, while eating dinner at the kitchen table, Richard and his wife Helen saw a dark figure come out of the basement door and enter the kitchen.
Right? Yeah.
Helen ran behind Richard, and Richard grabbed his gun and fired 2 shots at the figure. And they both watched the bullets go through the figure and into the door of the basement, and then the figure was gone.
Ooh, that's just bad juju. No.
Right?
Yeah. I don't like that. No, thank you. No. Because if she was hiding behind him, like, and he legitimately fired a gun, like, they absolutely saw some sort of full body thing that convinced both of them, like, we need a gun right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do know that they legitimately fired a gun. In fact, Sam, I'm sure you'll cover it. This was one of, like, the lores. Like, there was a door in the residence with bullet holes in it. It's there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, but I actually got to speak to a lot of locals who have been there, and a lot of them had mentioned, like, there were bullet holes in that door specifically.
Oh, man.
So yeah, we'll get to some of that a bit later here. But I saw a lot of different descriptions of what this figure looked like. Some say that it was the figure of a man, some say it was more of a mist, and some say that it was a woman in a nightgown with long black hair.
Either way, super spooky.
Yes.
Right. No to all of the above. Eh.
Because of all of this, it scared the LaMontes so much that they left the home and decided never to go back, leaving all of their belongings behind.
Wow. Like the antique, like
Everything.
all of their. Wow. Okay, so whatever it was, they saw something.
Yeah.
Yes. And like one of the most common things that I saw discussed, specifically what they left behind, was this big, massive pool table in the basement.
Oh.
And I saw.
Oh, well, I guess, sorry, I was just going to say, they're really heavy.
Oh, they're.
I don't know if they were that heavy back
Our
then.
parents have a pool
Probably
table in
even
the
heavier.
basement. They are very
Yeah.
heavy.
Yes.
But yeah, there were a lot of different stories of people going in there and seeing this pool table throughout the decades. So like that's one thing we specifically know that just stayed in the house.
Yeah.
So 11 years later, after the Lamonts fled, the Kiefer family purchased the mansion and the surrounding land. And I saw some reports that said the Kiefers were trying to make this their vacation home similar to the Lamonts. But when I was speaking to some locals, I'm honestly not sure if that's true, because it sounds like they lived in the area or lived in the area after they bought the home. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm pretty sure they're locals.
Right. Okay.
And Mrs. Kiefer, she was very weary of the house. But Mr. Kiefer fell in love with it, and he wanted to repair it since it just had sat empty for over a decade.
Oh, dudes are always looking for a project.
Right?
I was gonna say, I was like, poor Mrs. Kiefer. They rolled up to this house and she was like, absolutely not. And her husband was like, we're gonna build this outbuilding and remodel this. And Mrs. Kiefer is like, I do not want to be here in this spooky house.
Immediately, she did not like the house. It gave her this uneasy feeling.
Okay.
And unfortunately, Mr. Kiefer would die of a heart attack only 6 months after purchasing the mansion.
Oh, no.
Oh.
So not only
I feel bad
is
for
she
everybody.
now a widow, she's left with this land and mansion that she didn't even want to be inside of.
Oh, damn. This sucks. I feel bad. Like I said, poor Mrs. Kiefer is like, I'm stuck in the Haunted Mansion at Disney World because my husband. And then I feel bad for Mr. Kiefer because he never got to finish his project.
Yeah.
He just wanted a project, man.
Right? So over the next few years, Mrs. Kiefer sold off pieces of the land, and all that was left was about 1.5 acres to 2 acres. That was the land with the mansion. And this wasn't because people didn't want the mansion. She had it for sale. She tried to sell it, and she actually received multiple offers. But each time she would accept an offer, the buyer would end up having some sort of financial issue, and the sale would fall through. So, like, that just was like a repeating event in her life, trying to get rid of it.
This poor one.
This house will not leave her alone.
They won't leave her alone.
There were times like she just truly wanted nothing to do with it. She never actually came out and said it was haunted, and there doesn't seem to be reports of paranormal activity when she was there. But there was something that made her so uneasy that she refused to go inside. And when potential buyers would come to tour the house, she would basically tell them, like, go inside, give yourselves a tour, I'll stay out here. Like,
ooh, red flag as a home buyer.
Just didn't even want to walk in the door.
Well, there's two types of home buyers out there. They're the ones that are like, this is weird, which I would say probably 90% of the humans. And then there's like us that'd be like, what's weird about it?
Yes.
I was going to say, like, I think, like,
how weird.
I prefer to tour
what you got?
without, like, somebody, like, over my shoulder.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
like, there would be a little bit of a red flag, but I'm not sure if it would convince me of anything.
Right.
Yeah, I do believe that, like, I believe her, even though this is, like, centuries old, and I only know her by the name Mrs. Kiefer, but I believe you can feel like the vibes in certain spots, and you're like, I'm not supposed to be here, man. I don't want to be here.
Well, I also imagine that there's
it.
probably a lot of emotions for her because her husband was so invested in the house, and then she lost him so shortly after buying it. So I can imagine that in itself could affect her.
Yeah, so maybe it wasn't all like ghosties at that point. Maybe it was just like her life, which that was a sucky situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's more than fair.
Sucks.
Yeah.
So the home buyers can tour themselves, and hopefully somebody will be like, this is super weird. I'm into it.
Yeah. Right. And Mrs. Kiefer would eventually turn to wanting to rent out the mansion because it's sitting there. Might as well try to make an income if she can't sell it.
I mean, yeah.
But she kind of ran into the same issues. A lot of times there would be payment issues from the tenants that would force Mrs. Kiefer to have to evict them. And this unfortunately led to some of the tenants damaging items, especially after they received their eviction notice. So the house just kind of fell into more disrepair over time.
Oh no.
Finally, in the 1970s, Arnold and Ginger Hinshaw moved into the mansion. They intended to make it their full-time home with their 6 children.
Well, the house
that's a lot of children.
It's big enough.
That's cool.
Say it's a 20-room house.
I was gonna say.
Absolutely.
You get 20 rooms? Yeah, you get 20 rooms. That's 6 divided by 20.
Right. Like, I'm not sure how many bedrooms specifically, because I tried to, like, get a breakdown or, like, a general floor plan of it. But obviously 20 rooms is just the room count in total. But I guarantee you there was enough bedrooms for each child.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking 3. I pulled out my calculator, y'all, because I'm real bad at number stuff. And that's 3.33 rooms per kid.
Right.
So they're doing pretty good.
Right.
And since Mr. Kiefer died so soon after purchasing the home, and he was unable to finish the repairs, and in addition to the house just sitting dormant, and then the tenants who damaged the home for a couple decades, the Hinshaw family took to work to help make the repairs happen.
Okay.
They called different contractors to come get the work done, but these contractors actually refused to work on the house. They would go as far as dropping off the building materials at the end of the driveway and just leaving it there, so that the Hinshaws they had to do everything themselves.
That's wild. Like, local contractor, like, they were like, no, man, not going in there.
Right. And remember, this is a very, very small town, so you don't have a whole long list of contractors to call.
No.
If you get through a pretty short list. If no one wants to work on it, you have no one to do the job.
Right, yeah, you're in trouble.
And they, at one point, when they're doing this work themselves, they're upstairs painting one of the rooms, and they're in one of the closets of that room painting it, and they move a dresser out of the way, and they notice that there's actually a really small door that leads to kind of an attic or crawl space area. So Arnold and Ginger kind of poke their heads in and see if there's anything back there, and they could see something, but they weren't entirely sure what it was. To them, it kind of looked like hair and maybe a bone. But they weren't sure, and the area was really dark. The doorway was very small. They couldn't fit in it themselves. So they asked one of their daughters to help.
Oh
my God.
Yeah.
Send the kid in.
So
I mean, that's where you have all of them, right?
Right. Put yourself in this hole. There might be something dead in there, but just let me know what you find.
Right.
Right.
We think we see bones. Yeah. Will you go in there and check? You know, regular crawl space stuff. Don't worry about it. Just crawl right on in there.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and I might see a bone and something, but you know, you'll be fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, you'll be good. You'll be fine. Just let us know what's back there.
So once she climbed in, she started to look around, and then she started to scream.
This all tracks.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, I probably would too.
She came out and she told Harold and Ginger that she saw a dead body. She said that she could see a skeletal arm, a leg, and a skull with long black hair.
Oh, no.
That's enough detail to make me believe her.
We'll get into some information later of like whether every bit and piece of these stories are true. But this seems like it did happen. She's talked about this before. I was listening to, I believe it was Hometown Ghost Stories, who found an article or something mentioning that when she does talk about this with people, she brings a lawyer with her. I don't know why.
Probably just someone to poke her inside and be like, don't say that. Like, you can, defame somebody. Like, that you're getting awful close to, like, slander territory here.
Yeah, so
the lawyer's like, you can't say that you're gonna sound nuts.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they got their information, but I feel like a lot of times they do good research.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I just found that interesting.
It's probably just a situation where a lot of people don't want to talk about it. It makes them uneasy. And the lawyer was just kind of there as extra protection to be like, hey, this is one of those people that said they didn't want to be involved.
Yeah, I think it's just protecting herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
Right.
She did, crawl into a crawl space. By her parents, I'd bring a lawyer too. You can't trust nobody. Right. Your dad sent you in there.
Well, once they found this, they made the decision not to call the police or the local authorities.
Maybe not the best decision they've ever made.
Yeah. And there's a lot of speculation on why they didn't, but the most common kind of conversation with this is that they just didn't want to draw attention to the house being haunted. They had heard LaMonte stories and they knew that there were rumors about it.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's like well known in town.
Yes.
Now too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they also kind of went back and wanted to take another look, and the body was gone.
Ugh, I don't like any of that.
So yeah, they can't really call the police being like, I think I found something, and then not have anything to show them.
Like when you bring your car to mechanic and the ticking noise is gone as soon as you get there.
Right.
Yeah. I don't like it if there's a body there. I don't like it if the body's not there, because where'd it go if it's not there?
In that aspect, I think I almost like it less that the body's not there anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
if you find something, like we talked about this with Pamela Banos, was like, put it back, let it rest where it was. Like you can take that attitude with this if you want, but if it just vanishes, it's like that's a whole different story.
Right, and then you're questioning your own sanity.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And your house's sanity. And before you know it, you're in The Shining.
Well, we're gonna get there in this next paragraph.
Yeah. Sounds like we're borderline.
Oh dear. We're borderline right now.
Right. Things really started to escalate within the next 6 months. Up until this point, the Hishaw family had experienced a couple little things. There were a couple times where they thought they were hearing voices, or a light would flicker, turn on and off on its own. But 6 months after they potentially found this body, something started to change within Arnold. They had an organ in their house, and he would start playing it all night long.
Oh, that's not
keeping the family awake, playing the organ.
No. These poor women in this story.
Yeah.
Poor Ginger is like, will you quit it with the organ, because I haven't slept in days? And Mrs. Kiefer is like, I need to get the hell out of here. Like,
and Ginger would actually go and ask Arnold why he's doing this, and his response was that he was protecting the family from demons.
This house has like a chokehold on men.
It is.
Yes.
And, there's the Discovery show A Haunting covered this years and years and years ago. And that was kind of their takeaway, is that like, this affects men. more than any other people.
Well, I
That's
feel pretty
true.
good about like not getting haunted. Then I'll go there and kind of check things out. Oh, legally, of course.
Right.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with legal, obtain the proper legal permission, and then we're protected. It sounds like.
Exactly.
But also, if my husband started playing the organ all night long, because this is okay. To be fair, this is the 70s.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
I'm correct. Yes, 70s. So if I had a husband playing an organ all night long, and I asked him why, and he said it was to protect me from demons, I would be like, okay, so this is probably onset schizophrenia. Like, I probably need to call someone, but it's the 70s, so I'm not gonna.
They
Yeah.
probably
And we're
didn't
gonna
even
keep
have
hearing
that
the organ.
thought at that point
Yeah,
in the 70s.
no. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that. Yeah, I doubt that thought would have even entered their mind. She probably was just like, I guess I just have to hear this organ now.
Right. So he's keeping everyone up all night. Everyone's sleep deprived. And they all started to experience more activity within the house. Lights started flickering a lot more. They got more disembodied voices. And at one point, which we don't have a ton of information on this, their car in the driveway suddenly caught fire. No one was outside, just suddenly burst into flames.
Oh, jeez, okay. You guys know a lot more about cars than I do. My dad was also a mechanic, so I should know more about cars. But what I have known thus far is that they don't easily just burst into flame.
Not when they're off sitting in your driveway.
Yeah, generally
Right.
not.
Generally not.
Um,
This seems like a big one. Problem.
yeah, but similar to the body in the attic, they didn't report this to local authorities. So that's why we don't really know a whole lot of details about it.
I just, if you're on all that land, which I imagine has to be, we talked about it being like heavily wooded, like even though they like sold off parts of it, like, and you've got your car that's a fireball, like, wouldn't you want to call the fire department just to like tell them, like, in case the wind catches this? I don't know.
Well, this is
this
a whole
is
different era. This is before people were doing immediate gratification on anything in their life, and also a lot of people of this era, I think like it's the 70s, they're from the 50s, 40s even. That was a very self-sufficient generation.
That's true.
So to have a fire department come and do things might have not been a regular thing there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But at the same time, Kelly, with what you're saying, this is a very heavily wooded area, even today.
Still. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That having a car in the driveway, you're still pretty close to trees.
Yes.
Like feet away from trees.
Ugh.
That, like,
See,
could catch those trees on fire.
But it just makes sense that I'm like thinking in the 2024 mindset, and
Yeah.
I get this. I didn't even think that like the Ginger and Arnold would be like children of the 50s, and just again upvote Ash, self-sufficient generation.
Yeah.
Eventually, in the late 70s into early 80s, the Hinshaws would flee the house. Just like the LaMontes did.
Sounds
Oh my
familiar.
gosh.
I saw some
Oh,
reports
Lord.
that this affected Ginger so much that she had actually attempted suicide due to all of the stress that she was under from the haunting, from what was happening with Arnold, just kind of everything combined.
Wow.
That's terrible.
And
I see why. Those are some big stressors.
yeah.
You know, everything stressors. You can't feel safe in your own home or with your partner because you don't know. You know. Oh.
well, you have 6
poor
kids.
Ginger.
It feels like you probably can't keep them
Hey,
safe.
oh God. Yeah, exactly. I forgot. I'm like, holy crap! I forgot we got 6 kids we're keeping up here too. Mm-hmm. Oh goodness.
And I spoke with a woman who let me have some information that her daughter, Callie Roberts, did for a project that she was working on, where she dove into a lot of the historical record of Summerwind, and she was kind enough to share all of her resources in the report with me.
Nice.
And in that report, she mentioned that Arnold was also committed to a mental health facility after leaving the home.
Wow.
So Kelly, exactly as you were saying earlier, like maybe this could be something schizophrenic or some other mental health disorder that he was suffering from.
Yeah.
He was actually
also, again,
committed for something. I don't know what, but something after
Poor
leaving the home.
Ginger. Do you happen to know if it was before or after Ginger's suicide?
I think they happened
attempt?
close to the same time, but I honestly don't know.
Because that's another huge. Yeah, I just would think that would be another huge motivating factor.
That's kind of what
you're
I'm
all of a sudden
thinking.
on your own.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you're all of a sudden on your own with all them kids and Arnold's gone and yeah, can't feel safe.
Eventually, Ginger did divorce Arnold, remarried, and was able to move on with her life. So that is a good outcome for her.
Okay.
That is until her father, Raymond von Bober, decided that he wanted to take over the abandoned mansion from his daughter with the goal of turning the building into a lakeside bed and breakfast.
I'm getting bad feelings about it already.
Yeah. So
and
she was clear of it.
Another poor Ginger, another man, obsessed with
and
this
her brother's
property
also
and
going to be
this
involved
acreage.
too. So,
oh my gosh, this is like when World of Warcraft first came out, and I told everyone I compared it to a tornado. I compared it to a real war because it had taken all the men in my life: my father, my brother, my boyfriend, all of them around World of Warcraft. Except here, all these men are just fascinated by this acreage, and all these women are like, "We gotta get out of here."
Yeah,
Stat.
they have the feeling of something wrong. Like maybe she should be listened to a little more. And history shows that they've been right a few times.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But at this point, Ginger actually hadn't really told her father what she had experienced. She kept a lot of that to herself.
Oh.
So once he started
okay.
to express that he had this interest in turning it into a bed and breakfast, she felt she really needed to inform him of everything that had happened. But he decided to still go on with his plan.
Okay.
So
All right.
Raymond,
Yeah, sure.
right, exactly. So Raymond and his son Ray Jr. went to go work on Summerwind. They actually stayed on a trailer on the property instead of living in the house when this was all happening.
Maybe that would save him a little bit from possible demon embodiment spirit.
Right.
Right, yeah, get you your own area.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if it was because they were just remodeling the house so it wasn't quite livable, or if it was because they were scared of the experiences that that daughter experienced, or what. But they lived in a trailer.
Right.
And the father-son pair would have a lot of different experiences. And Raymond Sr. would publish these experiences in a book called The Carver Effect. And he also published it under a false name, Wolfgang von Bober.
If you're going to pick a false name, that's a good one.
Say it's his real,
You're right.
It's his real last name with a very uncommon first name.
Wolfgang.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. It does make it sound like it does sound like somebody who would write a book about the paranormal experience they had.
Right.
Wolfgang von Bober. That sounds kind of like somebody, who would read that book or write that book.
And I read the book probably about 15 years ago. Ashley, I know you've read it at one point.
Yeah, it was back in the day, high school, many moons ago.
See, I think I read it in college, but it is currently out of print, and it is incredibly expensive to buy. So, unfortunately, I couldn't reread it for this episode. So, I'm going to do my best to piece together a synopsis from my memory. So,
what a shame.
Ashley, chime in if you have anything to add that you remember.
I'll see what I can remember.
So I believe that most of the stories in the Carver Effect happen to Ray Jr., But Raymond Sr. witnessed a lot of it, and then is the one who put it in the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't uncommon that Ray Jr. would be inside measuring the house, preparing for some of the renovations he had planned. And he would measure and then go back and remeasure. And it would seem that the rooms would actually change sizes. Like his measurements were just completely different.
I do remember that in the book. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. I hate that.
Well,
hate that
at
more
one
than
point
anything.
too,
I would be so pissed and scared.
Imagine trying to like plan your construction.
Just right, yeah, just trying to lay on this floor, like this room every day, and spooky.
Yeah.
At one point, he said he was mopping the hallway, and he actually watched the hallway grow and just get longer and longer.
Oh,
that's eerie.
Yeah,
right.
We're in The Shining. Yeah, this is Shining material.
Yeah. Well, this reminds me, Ashley, I don't know if you remember this. I definitely remember it quite vividly. There was the Stephen King short story that was turned into the miniseries Rose Red.
Oh my gosh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it seems like.
I do remember that, and it was a miniseries.
Yeah, it was on ABC, and it had the girl from Halloween Town in it.
It did.
Oh, Kimberly Ross, I believe.
Yeah,
she
something like that.
Total side note. She married y'all. I don't know if y'all fuck with Halloween Town, and I'm talking to the listeners because I know you two do.
I love it.
But her name, for a quick throwback for our '90s kids, her name was Kimberly J. Brown, and from the second movie, Calabar's Revenge, she just married the villain. Like last month.
Oh, really?
They reconnected Calabar's son, remember, in part 2?
Oh,
Who's kind of like the hottie boom body bad boy. She just married him.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. Sorry, that wasn't relevant, but
I
love it. I loved Rose Red when I was a kid.
Yeah, I remember the book, like the Stephen King book.
Yeah, it was a short story, and I don't remember which book it was in.
I remember reading it. I think I read an excerpt that was just Rose Red. I don't think I had his whole book.
Yeah.
Because I remember it being a short story.
Yeah.
But at one point, Ray Sr. and Ray Jr. were both outside by their trailer, and they said that they could see the house moving as if it were breathing. Like, going in and out.
This is Overlook Hotel material.
Right?
Yes.
If I could visually see that, I'd be like, I am out.
Right? Terrifying.
Yeah, I'd be like, nope.
So, as we kind of talked about through all this, Raymond Sr. was just very drawn to the house. And I know I've been calling it Summerwind throughout this whole episode, but it wasn't known as Summerwind until the book was released in 1979. The LaMontes called it Lilac Hills, and then many others throughout the years just called it the LaMonte Mansion. Mm-hmm. But one morning when Raymond Sr. was outside kind of walking near the end of the driveway by the road, there was a gust of wind that blew some sign off of a dirt that said Summerwind. So he just kind of took that as his sign that, like, that's this name, like, has to be called this. And so that's how he referred to it in the book.
Yeah, if I had a mansion, I'd name it. If I had a house, I'd name it.
I'll say it's pretty common up in that area to name your house.
Yeah.
Like, Ashley, I know you have a name for yours. I won't say it, but you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and it's even in up north, not as far as you guys would go, but I'm from Lake Town as well, and was very close to a lot of these vacation homes, and almost all of them in northeastern Ohio, at least, on that Lake Edge had a name. Almost every single house.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, but Summerwind's a good one.
Yeah, I like it, and it because it was published in the book. That's just what it became most commonly known as since the
around
80s.
Town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Okay. And now everybody kind of just knows it as Summerwind.
Yeah, if you were to say, like, oh, have you heard of the LaMonte Mansion? most people would probably say no, but if you say Summerwind, they would immediately know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
I think you would really have a hard time with anyone up here, not like local people, not knowing what Summerwind is.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I reached out to a community board for Violets County, which is where Summerwind is, and I had so many people messaging me to tell me their stories.
Oh my gosh.
That, like,
I
everyone immediately
telling
knew.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling me you had so many that you were like, I'm going to have to stay up for like an extra hour to grab all these stories.
Yeah,
and
I was up until like 3 a.m.
This place
one day,
must be...
like, just taking down
and
people's
this is
stories.
Still... I was like a dog with the zoomies, like, I don't know what I'm excited about, but I can't wait to hear. Because Sam kept this one secret.
So, in the Carver effect, Raymond says that a spirit that haunts Summerwind is the ghost of Jonathan Carver, who was a real person, but the spirit was looking for something that he had left behind.
Aren't they always?
Right? Unfinished business.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Right?
Oh, God, another great one. Is it Halloween yet?
To me, it is. I should get my decorations
It's
up.
It absolutely is. Happy Spooky Pride, everyone.
Say, once it hits summer, in my head, that's just Halloween prep.
Yes.
Like,
yes, exactly, yeah. It's time now. The time to get ready is now. And then you get ready, you stay ready, and you Halloween all of October. And then you stay ready for 364 more days.
Yes, right.
After that.
I say, if you were to see my apartment, there's a lot of spooky things here. I think, Ashley, you've given me a lot of spooky things.
I have a habit of doing that.
I love it.
I know that I have too.
I'm sitting here looking at my cats my painted cats of horror movies.
Yes.
Oh, those were... Sam showed me them, and they're so good. They're so good.
I found them on Etsy. I should find that artist.
We actually talked about it in our last episode, and I'm going to link it with our socials.
Nice. I'll get you the artist's name.
Yeah, it's Becca by hand.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
we'll
incredible.
Have to link.
It's like iconic images from horror movies, but the characters are cats, and it's great.
They're so good. And I know that I have given you... Well, I haven't given you anything truly spooky yet.
You gave me the coffin nail. I have it sitting on my desk right in front of me.
My house is... I frequently have to tell people before they come here, like, okay, so my house is my house, so just kind of like, again, get ready and stay ready, because you're going to look one direction and there's a taxidermied owl, and then you're going to look the other direction and there's a glass cabinet with a human mandible in it.
Right.
So.
But let's get into who Jonathan Carver is, or was. He was an English explorer from the 1760s. And he spent 3 years traveling west in America, spending a lot of that time in the upper Midwest. And some of this information is fairly widely disputed, but Dr. Lettsom, who is Carver's publisher for the book that he would eventually write about his travels, says that he met with 6 Sioux chiefs in a cave right outside St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
And
okay,
Carver had met with them, and his publisher is kind of like retelling this story.
Allegedly met. Okay, the doctor is just saying like this happened. Okay.
And he met with these 2 chiefs, and he met with 2 Sioux chiefs in a cave just outside St. Paul, and the 2 chiefs gave Carver a large amount of land in exchange for gifts and then future goods and services that Carver could provide.
Okay.
And this isn't necessarily an uncommon deal at this point. Like this stuff definitely sort of happened.
Yeah.
But this land that was
And we had more room.
Yeah.
We had more room.
Well,
like,
that was
you could make it
native land
land
at that
back
time.
then. Like, I feel like these days... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's indigenous land. Yeah. And, I mean, you know, yeah, back then it's just like, hey, we haven't explored a whole bunch of this is, like, probably virgin forest, you know? If you want to go hack down everything there...
Yeah.
Best wishes.
Yeah, so...
We'll be hunting on your property. Future goods and services.
The land that was gifted to him supposedly covers a very large portion of northern Wisconsin into eastern Minnesota. A lot of the reports I saw was about that it was about a third of the state of Wisconsin. So yeah, tons of land. And the reason this information is disputed is because no one has actually seen the deed itself. So supposedly Carver, who lived in London, had given his wife the deed before his death. And then after her death, Dr. Lettsome published a second edition of the book that Carver wrote discussing this deed. Because it sounds like it wasn't included in the first book, or that it wasn't... like the deed wasn't shown, like a copy of it wasn't shown in the book, and he added that in for the second edition of it.
Okay.
But what's odd is apparently Dr. Lettsome also never had his hands on this deed. So how did it get in the book? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This mystery,
documentarians
deed.
and historians and people who have looked into this, they're just like, we think this is fraudulent. Like they think there's zero credit to what's being said here. And in the early part of the 1900s, many of Carver's journals were found. So this is well after his death.
Okay.
And I think they were actually with the museum, but they hadn't really been reviewed and looked into until that point.
Oh, okay. And so these...
This is the early
the
1900s when the museum started to look into it.
Okay, in the early 1900s. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
And in his journals, they did not mention this transaction, but but they did mention that there was a meeting that took place with these Sioux chiefs.
Okay.
Oh.
So it's like they mentioned part of the story, but like these are his personal journals. So wouldn't you think that would have been mentioned?
Right. You would put everything.
Kind of a big deal to be involved in a land transaction or even be deeded all this land. And when you're writing down all kinds of stuff that happens in your life, why skip that part?
Exactly.
Yeah. As like a prolific journaler, if I acquired most of the state of Wisconsin, I would probably write it down. Or ask someone to sign something. But what it kind of sounds like is maybe this transaction happened. It just wasn't like a deeded
Which would
transaction.
Potentially make sense for the time period in the 1700s. But you still would think that a transaction of that sort would still be mentioned. Because in addition to all of that, with finding these journals, they actually discovered that Carver's books were based off of real events, but were greatly padded and edited by his editor, John Parker, who potentially slightly changed the narrative.
That guy might be a little bit motivated by book sales.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, which I think you're probably right with all of it, but Carver died a poor man. He wasn't making money off of this book. Eventually, the book would become incredibly popular and the money would be made from it, but that was well after his death. That was well after his wife's death. Like they couldn't afford to even give him a burial, and he was buried in a potter's field.
Oh no.
Oh my god, what a tragedy. And ain't that always the way it goes, too, you know? Like, you just covered Poe, and, you know, you die, and then all of a sudden 200 years goes past, and you're a phenomenon, and you're like, well,
Right.
come on, guys. Like, it was always good.
What is kind of weird about that is, like, okay, if this land deed existed, wouldn't you think he'd sell a little bit of it?
Yeah.
Because he had no money?
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
He has thousands
That's
of acres of
very
land.
good question.
Yeah. Like, if you can't eat, like, you gotta sell some of your property.
Exactly.
Right, if you're being buried in a potter's field, that's horrible. Like, tragic. I just feel like it's tragic when anyone's, like, buried all alone and like that. And, you know, I can't imagine why you wouldn't sell off some of this land with the time period, you know, because I imagine a lot of people would be interested.
Well, I guess I wouldn't really know what I don't remember when he died, but not long after this, into like the early to mid 1800s, that's when the mining started in that area. This is a very mineral rich land.
Okay.
You would think that would be prime time to sell it off.
Okay,
But honestly, I don't
Right.
remember when he died and when that officially started. He might not have been alive for that to sell it.
Oh.
I don't really know.
So
But what makes
weird.
this theory kind of odd, that has the slight potential of putting a little bit of weight to this theory, was that as more people started to travel westward and started claiming land, the land that was supposedly part of this deed was not really taken by anyone.
Oh.
It was like, that's kind of odd. So much land and no one kind of moved into it.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people were flooding west at that
My
time.
theory.
And you've got an inlet. You're on a well, it's a lake, so it's probably fresh water. You've got. I know you need running water to mine, and I mean seems
Well,
good.
m-
Sorry,
my
what was
theory
your
is
theory?
just
I
that
interrupted you.
The seasons are really harsh and people didn't want to deal with it. We
That could also
discussed
be
in the
so.
Paul Dinglite episode and the Hodag episode that, like, yes, this is a very mineral rich area, but the conditions were really harsh. The winters are really cold, really snow packed. You can only really do that work for certain times of the year. Are you, like, people didn't want to deal with it.
And people complain about that now, but this 1900s era, way before Gore-Tex.
Right. Yeah, like, you guys barely get any snow now, but back then, it was like, you could barely move in the snow.
God, can you
Right.
imagine?
Even when we were kids, it was hard.
Because I've seen you guys. We've in our epic group chat that y'all will never know how cool it is. I have seen pictures from you, Ash, of your backyard just covered in snow even today. So I can't imagine.
Oh yeah. Now the snow then was
Back
a
then.
whole nother animal.
Like-
It was insane. The stuff that you see historical photos of, I don't even know how they were physically able to move the snow. I mean, we have the technology
Right.
now to do it. Then when it
Yeah.
snowed that much, you just stayed in your building basically. Like, you couldn't open the doors.
There's a,
Right.
where's the,
Right. Okay. That
where's
makes perfect
the,
sense.
The
I mean,
snow meter in the UP? What town is it in?
I believe it's in Larium.
Miriam? There's it's a meter on the side of the road that shows, like, the maximum snow for 1 year. And it's, what, 36 feet?
Yes.
oh,
That's
That is
1 year's
so
worth
many
of
It
snow.
measures the total snowfall. It
That's-
doesn't necessarily mean like the depth sitting on the ground, but it will measure like each fluff storm
right.
on top of it as if it were never to have melted. And yeah, they're
Okay.
usually around the 30-foot mark.
There's a lot of homes up there that have exterior
Yeah, see,
doors on the second floor with nothing going to them, so that if you're snowed in, you can at least still get out of your house.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
That's very common.
Smart.
Yep.
You climb you out the second window. Yeah. Ohio really needs to jump on board with the snow
That's very
meter.
cool.
I think that's a good idea because we get hit with all that. We get hit with all that lake effect too. But nothing, I think, that could quite possibly compare to like a dense I feel like a lot of snow and a snowpack are
Yeah.
two different
We were
things.
kids. We would like stop on the side of the road and take pictures with the snow meter.
Yes.
Like, we were there a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are we doing today? Yeah, how are we doing this year?
So let's get back to Summerwind and how Jonathan Carver relates. And I don't remember if it was Robert Sr. or Robert Jr. in the book. I don't know if you remember, Ashley, which one of them actually came across the spirit of Jonathan Carver. I want to say it was Robert Jr., but it's one of the two. I don't remember.
I remember the story in the book, but I don't remember which guy.
Well, either way, yeah, it's like a father documenting his son's or his son,
right?
Like firsthand. So either way, we know that he's writing down probably exactly what his son said or what he saw.
But they said that Jonathan Carver told them that he had buried the deed on the property in a box. And yeah.
Yeah, I remember this story.
Yeah.
Okay. But what strikes me is like, okay, so a fully formed apparition and it's smoked.
This raises a lot of questions.
Okay.
Yes.
As we said, Carver died a poor man in London. His wife, also in London, supposedly had the deed after his death. So, and then it's been lost forever since then.
Right.
So, unless Carver's wife traveled from London to northern Wisconsin to bury this deed, never tell anybody about it, then it's still out there. Or, more likely, it just never existed.
Yeah.
That all makes sense. I bet there was a period of time, though, where you couldn't move for people with metal detectors
I'm sure.
property.
That's still a thing.
Do you guys know? Yeah. Do people still do that?
We'll get into some of the stories of me and Ashley with what we've heard with this later.
These stories all stemmed into our
cool.
Why everyone went there now.
Yep.
Okay.
So this thought really consumed Ray Sr. enough for him to write the book about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not entirely sure what happened over the next few years. But I assume they essentially ran out of money for all these repairs because it was never completed and just left abandoned.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, again.
And what?
It's a big house.
Yes.
Oh, I just said it's a big house for anyone to take on as far as repairs go.
So the mansion was sold to the Tracy family in 1986. And at that point had continued to sit dormant. I believe that Harold Tracy purchased the home as a gift for his wife, Babs, but she didn't really want it. It was like he gave her the deed, and she's just like, cool.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Right? So it kind of sounds like it might have been a gift for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from H3, Sam, but I was just watching that video, that soundbite that was thanks for this gift that sucks.
So in...
Again, a man, and Babs is like, I don't want this.
I've heard that story a few times, and then one of the people I talked to who actually knows and works with the Tracys, he kind of reconfirmed that for me, and I just thought that was hilarious.
An avocado.
That is hilarious.
So in the 80s, it became a very popular place to sneak into after Raymond's book came out.
Yeah.
And there were people going to see if they could have paranormal experiences. Many went there just to party because it's an empty house. Mm-hmm. Many went there to loot because there was still a lot of belongings left behind.
Oh, and potentially I don't know if any of the LaMontes would have still been there.
The pool table was still there, for sure.
But
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was still there. Okay. But I imagine their antiques and stuff like that may have been stolen prior.
I think
or
a lot
right
of that
now,
was looted when it sat empty in the 80s. But I know that the story that everyone kind of talks about is this pool table that came from the LaMontes.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and it was still there.
And the house would actually burn down on Father's Day in 1988.
Father's
right. I actually
Day.
never connected that. Yeah, it's on Father's Day.
Men, they burnt to the ground on Father's Day.
Right?
This is... I was like, this is these women's internal dialogue rising up, and it is so angry throughout the generations of this house that it burnt it to the ground.
And there's a lot of different stories of how the house burned. The story that I always heard was that it was struck by lightning. But actually, I don't want to quite finish that point yet. You just kind of need to know that it does burn down in the 80s. We'll continue this a bit later on.
Okay.
But first, I want to talk about some specific experiences and stories from locals who have visited the property. As I mentioned earlier, I posted on the Vilas County community page just to ask if anyone had stories that they would be willing to share. And so many responses came in that I actually had to pick and choose what to include. Otherwise, this episode would be 5 hours long. It's already going to be kind of a long episode. But I was blown away by the response. It kind of, I felt like when I was there, it was just me and my friends. Like it wasn't like a ton of kids went. I never ran into anybody else.
I never did either.
Wow, that's weird. That's weird too. When you think about it is a small town, so there may be a limited amount of teenagers. But this is like prime time sneak-in territory. Like 16-year-old Kelly would be picking locks left, right, and center. And so it's kind of surprising in itself that neither of you ever ran into anyone else.
But with the way that like people were messaging me, it's just like everyone's been there.
Oh yeah. And it's not like the stories were made up. I feel like the stories were all
weird,
like the same. They were all describing the same thing.
They really were, which is why I felt like I was able to kind of help pick and choose some of this, because a lot of the stories were, I'd kind of be repeating the same thing over again with a different name associated to it. But I do want to start with somebody who has asked me to keep themselves anonymous. So just for the ease of the conversation, I'm going to call him Joe.
Okay.
And I've been able to confirm that this is a trustworthy source, and that for the most part, what Joe talked about with his experiences were happening in the 80s after it was already abandoned, but before it burned down. And he mentioned one of his experiences, and something that kind of relates to his experience. This piece that kind of relates, we will talk about, but I do kind of want to mention at the top here, it is unconfirmed. He told me everything that he remembers, but it's a story that he heard that kind of led him to do certain things in the mansion. But we don't even know if this story is true.
Sure.
So he said that one night he was in the mansion with some friends, and Joe and one other friend went upstairs. The rest of the friends kind of stayed on the downstairs. They were scared. They didn't want to go up there, because the reason that Joe and his friend went up is because they heard that somebody had potentially committed suicide in one of the bedrooms on the second floor. So
and this was like a more recent suicide, or this was like something historical suicide?
We don't know.
Oh.
I asked him if he could give me any information that he remembers, and he said that it was very foggy. This was just kind of like a lore story that he was told that just interested him, and that's why he went upstairs to check it out.
Gotcha.
I tried to look this up. I couldn't find any information on it. I've talked to a handful of people. One of the people that we'll be talking about at the end here is essentially the unofficial historian on Summerwind. He never heard this story. So I kind of think that's all it is. It's just a story.
Okay.
But the reason he went up there is because he had heard this.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And, I mean, Carl's there in the 80s, so I don't blame his friends for being scared, because A, it's, like, supposed to be haunted, and B, we're in this period of the 80s where we're starting to get toward the tail end of being structurally sound.
Yeah. And so he said, like, when he went upstairs, he didn't feel anything weird. It was just, it was dark. Him and his friend are walking around.
Yeah.
He
General
did say
area.
that he saw a door for one of the upstairs bedrooms, which was potentially the room where the suicide had happened. It was kicked in. So obviously that could be just other teenagers in the
Okay,
house.
So maybe, yeah.
It kind of seemed like he was implying that at least he thought that could have been like a police response or something. But again, it's all unconfirmed. The house was empty for so
Maybe so.
long. It could have just been someone else kicking in the door.
Right.
Right, a lot of it could have been a lot of things, yeah. But it could have been that. That's
Right. Yeah, he
Doesn't rule
said
it
that
out.
he actually was hoping to like see the bullet hole and that they were going up there to kind of look at that. No,
like the
from the
LaMonte
potential
bullet hole
suicide.
or the
Because the LaMonte bullet hole was in the kitchen downstairs.
Oh, okay, so they think oh, right, okay, yeah. Okay, that's why I was confused. Okay, so they think they're basically just checking all around this upstairs room for any evidence of this thing actually happening.
But he unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to look for the
Okay.
bullet hole because while they were upstairs, a bat flew out and scared them. And the person that he
man.
was with, she started to scream and like freak out.
Scared.
Understandably, you're in the dark and something comes flying at your face. I've been there.
Yeah,
I think Ashley,
yeah.
you've probably been there.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Nah, all my life I had to fight. No.
Yeah, and so Joe's trying to calm down his friend who's kind of panicking over this, understandably.
Right.
And then all the friends downstairs are hearing this happen, so they're yelling up the stairs for them, but they're too scared to come up.
Oh God.
So it sounds like this just turned into a very chaotic moment.
Yeah, this turned into mass confusion.
Yeah. So nothing else really happened at that point. It sounds like it was just kind of a calm night, or they left right after this. But he did say he vaguely remembers reading The Carver Effect and having it mention a suicide. I don't remember this. I don't know if
I don't
Ashley, you
remember that
remember
in
this.
the book at all. No.
Me either. I've asked a lot of people who have read it, but everyone's kind of in the same boat where it's like, we haven't read it in 15, 20 years. We don't remember. So
It's such a bummer that it's out of print.
I tried to find it. The cheapest copy I found, I think, was $160. But there were rates in like the
Dang.
500s for this book.
Whew. How many? So you guys are both locals and have both read this. How many people would you say like in town? Like, has everybody kind of from a certain generation read this book?
I wouldn't say
Or-
that. Like, I don't think it was really widely read.
It's not that.
And it was not at my local library. I had to get it, like, you know how they have the interlibrary systems? It was sent to another
Yeah.
library. Like,
Oh.
to mine. And I remember, like, I
Okay,
was on
so
a
you
waiting
had-
list
yeah,
for
you
it.
did.
And I finally got it
Yeah.
after months of waiting.
Yeah, I just got lucky.
Yeah,
It was in my
go.
college library. Like, I just got lucky that it was there.
Okay.
But I know it was actually really widely read in the 80s. So it was kind of
Yeah, so,
before
like-
our time.
Okay.
I didn't know people that
okay.
read it. Like, the fact that I was able to get a copy, they're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've had a lot of
Okay, so
people
it's still
be like,
rare.
how did you get it in the 2000s?
Right.
Okay. All right. Cool. I was just trying to place how much this book like was woven into
Right.
the streets.
Yeah, in the 80s it was very widely read at that point,
And now
especially in the
it's-
area.
And now it's like spooky people like us.
So Joe also mentioned another time when he was at Summerwind, he was walking down the hallway with some friends, and they heard the sound of a dog running down the hallway behind them. And he said he can even hear like the jingling of the tags and like their paws on the floor, but there was just nothing there.
That is a distinct sound. You know
It's a
that
very
is.
distinct
It
sound.
is. Yeah, tip tap tip tap. I've had to edit it out so many times.
Right. And then another occurrence when he was at a mansion at a different time, he was actually there during the day because he was doing a school report on the history of the building, and he wanted to take photos for his report. And again, this is the 80s, film cameras. You have to wait to get it developed.
Yeah.
And so he took a photo of the exterior of the house. And while he was taking the photo, everything looked fine. But then when he got it developed, he saw a light in one of the upstairs windows of the house that didn't appear in person.
Oh. And at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going in the 80s, the house didn't have, like, power.
I honestly don't know if it had power. I would assume not. I actually think he told me it didn't have power. But my one thing with this, and I haven't seen the photo, he said he's going to try to find it for me. But it's probably in a file somewhere. It's not a digital photo.
Right, sure. It's a real photo.
Yeah, so if he's able to find it and gives us permission, we will post it on our socials. But my wonder is, it was during the day, and as we said early in this episode, the water is very close to the house. Maybe it was a reflection on a wave that just hit at that perfect moment. I don't know. I don't even know what angle he took the photo. It might not have been facing the water. But
that is a really sound explanation, though.
I say we've seen it.
Potential
like, we
explanation.
grew up on lakes. We see that sort of stuff all the time, where you get like this massive glare all of a sudden when you're in your house.
Right. Or you're in front, doing the family Easter photo, and you're like trying to round everybody up and trying to make sure also that your windows aren't just like blasting through the kids' faces and stuff.
And then the last thing that Joe was able to tell me was he described a little bit of what he remembers of the house looking like before it burned. And there were two distinct things that he remembered to be able to tell me. The first was being downstairs, kind of in the basement area. There was a large meat locker. And he says it was just like very ominous, because it's like you go in and it still has all the meat hooks hanging from the ceiling.
No, ma'am.
That's horrible.
I don't go in. That's the thing. Yeah, I don't, like, some people might go in and see the meat hooks still hanging from the ceiling. I'm going to choose to believe them.
Oh, I would go
and be
in.
outside holding everyone. I'm going to be outside holding everyone's bags.
Yeah. I'll stay here and watch our stuff, thank you.
Right, exactly. Like, I'll stay by the on the main level and try and... But if you tell me there's a pool table down there, I might end up down there anyway, checking that out.
Yeah.
But I'm not going in that meat locker. That sounds so scary.
Yeah, it would definitely be creepy, especially in a basement, because it's like even during the day it's going to be dark.
Yeah.
But he also talked about the great room, which I believe was on the main floor. He said he specifically remembered the walls, because it was either panels or wallpaper that had large peacocks painted on it.
I've heard that.
Ooh.
Which just sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
It does.
But yeah, that's all.
Some woman had to design that.
Right.
Well, these men were purchasing this land.
That's really kind of all Joe could remember to tell me. So if you're listening,
It's pretty.
I thank you for telling me experiences. That
Thank
was
you.
a very
That's-
interesting
yeah.
conversation.
And it kind of gives us a little visibility as to what was, like, still in the house and that kind of stuff before it burned.
Yeah.
And, like, the interior.
Yeah, exactly. But then I also spoke with
That was
a
nice,
woman
man.
who I'm also going to keep anonymous. She didn't give me explicit permission to use her name, so I'd kind of prefer just to be on the safe side. So let's call her Kathy. Kathy said that she was a young kid when her grandmother was friends with Mrs. Kiefer.
Oh.
And it doesn't really sound like she had any sort of paranormal experiences while there, but she really just loved being there. She would beg her grandparents to take her to the house, and it became a routine for her and her grandparents to deliver fresh fruit to Mrs. Kiefer every Sunday. And at the time, Mrs. Kiefer lived on West Bay Lake, so they were close to the home, and sometimes they'd go to the home after that as well. And so it just, her memories just seemed so happy. She seemed really excited to kind of talk about it. She's the one who mentioned to me that the Kiefers rented out the house. I actually had not known
okay.
that before. But she says she rented it out to a single mother at one point who ended up damaging it pretty badly after her lease wasn't renewed. So that was kind of the first stories I personally had heard about people being in there when I thought it was dormant, and then the damage that came with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, that's kind of it makes sense that she was like a young kid, and I feel like they feel vibes more, and she felt a comforting vibe.
She felt a very comforting vibe, and we'll kind of get back to a story
Ooh.
of kind of that comfort in a little bit
Okay,
here.
so maybe Kathy's one of us.
Right.
She's like, I like it here.
She was great to talk to. She was super sweet.
And that's so nice, just to deliver fresh fruit to her.
Right? And I've also been told that the Hinshaws they didn't own the home, that they were actually renting it from the Kiefers. And so my question, and Ash, maybe you can give us a little more insight into this. Is it common for a renter to like totally remodel a home?
Well, it depends on obviously your contract. I've had tenants, so I've had a couple rental houses that like ask to paint, and I don't have a problem with that as long as they're like neat painters. But totally,
I'm allowed to paint my apartment.
Yeah, like remodeling. I
am not.
In my head, I guess it depends on the definition of remodeling, because you see these Pinterest mamas that are like, I'm remodeling today, and then they're like putting a new rug in their bathroom. So
right,
yeah. Like
me remodeling is like hanging up that sticky wallpaper you can get on Amazon.
Yeah, that's not remodeling in my head. So like I'm defining remodeling as like taking down a wall, putting in a new window, putting up door trim, taking down things. So like depending on how they're defining remodeling, I would say renters generally don't remodel in my definition of it.
That's exactly kind of the same lines I'm thinking. It's like painting's a whole different story. I have every room in my apartment painted, but I have permission from my building to do so, but I can't do anything else. There's other maintenance I need to call my building first.
Right. I would define a remodel as like if you can't put it back the way that you got it in, then like you didn't remodel.
Yeah. But I'm getting the sense
that's a really good way
that
to
the
put
Hinshaws,
it.
like, they were bringing in contractors. Like,
yeah, that's more than like
it was just
rental.
different.
Yeah, so that's something that's a little weird to me.
Yeah, I'm not even allowed to paint in this place.
I say this is the first apartment I've lived in that I'm allowed to paint in. I love that I can because I love my colors.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I absolutely would if I could.
But as I said, Kathy didn't have any paranormal stories to share, but it was just really nice to hear her fond memories of the house. And at one point, Kathy's mother, knowing how much she loved the house as a kid, got a couple of the original bricks from the house and had them painted with what the house looked like when she was a kid.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm going to ask her if I can share those on socials because she did send them to me, so I have seen them. And they're just super cute. It's super sweet.
That's awesome.
But then the last person that I talked to, who very much gave me the most information, is Craig Neering, who is the founder of Fox Valley Ghost Hunters. And he's written a book called Archives of a Ghost Hunter. He's also been in an episode of Destination Fear discussing the Sheboygan Asylum. And kind of funny side story, we discovered we met once in like 2010, 2011. Because when I was in college, we had a paranormal group come in to kind of teach us what goes into a paranormal investigation. And we actually did an investigation of our campus library, and that was Fox Valley Ghost Hunters. And so I've met Craig.
That's so funny. I love that you guys didn't realize till halfway through your conversation. Like, wait a minute.
Well, it was after we hung up the phone. And I messaged him after being like, I totally forgot to ask you this. But did you happen to be at this college in this time? And he's just like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah me too.
We're both there. We're on the same page.
Right. So Craig is essentially the unofficial historian on Summerwind. He knows the current owners, Harold and Babs Tracy. And he is one of the only ones, if not the only paranormal group with permission to investigate on the property.
Okay.
And he's done a lot of research into its history.
It's pretty cool that they're the only ones with, like, permission, you know, like, explicit permission for paranormal stuff. Like,
yeah, he used to, I'm sure I have this somewhere in my script here, but he actually started a group to help fund the reconstruction of it, to open it again as a bed and breakfast with the Tracys.
Oh. Okay.
And so he's done a lot of research into the history. He's actually from the area. So he kind of same story. He grew up going there as a teenager.
yeah.
And he really wanted to make it something again. And so he what he would do, part of like the fundraisers for this, is he would actually, with his Fox Valley Paranormal Group, open up public investigations where you could buy a ticket and actually join him, and then that money goes to the restoration fund.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
Yeah.
I would do that.
When I saw that, I got really excited, but unfortunately they've kind of stopped doing that because it wasn't generating what they needed it to.
Oh, crap.
Expensive project.
Seems.
It's a very expensive project, and so he hasn't been doing that for the last few years, but his team still goes up at least once a year to investigate.
Okay. Yeah.
But he was also I have to say, he was so gracious with his time with me, because I asked him so many questions through Messenger. He answered every single one of them, and then we hopped on the phone for nearly an hour so he could give me more in-depth information.
Nice.
So
That is awesome.
he was fantastic, and he was a really fun conversation. He's just a good person to talk to.
Oh my god, shout out Craig Nearing and Fox Valley Ghost Hunters.
Right? And first, the thing he mainly wanted to clarify is that Lamonte's story about seeing that apparition and shooting it may very likely just be a ghost story. Like, just made something to scare you. It's reported that Lamonte initially told this story to a fishing buddy, but that's also not confirmed. But if that is true, then you'll also know how game telephone works. That story is going to change over time.
Yeah.
It's evolved into something that probably is not related to the original occurrence.
Yeah,
And
I see how those things happen.
Exactly. This was the 1930s. Like,
Right.
Telling a fishing buddy something, it's not going to stay the same story.
Right.
Right. Game of telephone. And fishing buddies, you know, like, that's a whole nother kind of tall tale.
Yeah, that's an entire like genre of liars, basically. And the
I wouldn't say liars, but elaborators.
Elaborators.
Tall tale, yeah,
Yes.
tall tale. Tall tailors.
And another thing that Craig told me, which was also documented in the book The Haunted Northwoods by Tom Holitz, it was said that it was believed that Robert Lamonte actually had a mistress named Lucy.
Oh.
And I should clarify that The Haunted Northwoods is a very interesting read, but I'm not entirely sure how accurate all of the details are. The story kind of starts... It's a book of short stories from, I think, all of northern Wisconsin and a little bit of northern Minnesota.
Okay.
But in the Summerwind story, it starts out by talking about Lamont being from Detroit, moving to Chicago. But then it mentions that his family is actually from New York, which doesn't seem historically accurate, and that Lamonte married Lucy in trade for what was essentially Lamonte's father purchasing Lucy's family's plantation, and like part of the deal was like, you get my daughter.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
families are weird.
Also,
then.
wasn't he already married?
Yeah,
married?
that's why I'm like, I
That would
I
make
just
him a
don't
bigamist?
know if it's accurate, because like we do have
Yeah, what's the timeline?
the historical information on Lamonte saying that his family was from Detroit, that he married Helen, and that like
Right.
he became part of the Hoover administration. Like, but there's no
Right, you
information
would
about
think
them being
that-
from New York, marrying this,
Yeah,
this
oh, yeah.
Lucy, who I think was from South Carolina, and her family's plantation was failing, and so the LaMontes purchased the land and then married off the daughter. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, something happened there. There's an exchange of goods and services that may have involved a woman named Lucy.
Right.
That is crazy.
But there are some details in this book that kind of matches or coincides with things that Craig told me. That kind of fits and kind of makes sense. Craig believes that Lucy was indeed Lamonte's mistress, not wife, but mistress. And that he actually had locked her in the basement, which is something the book says that happened.
Ugh.
And
That's some Jane Eyre stuff.
right?
You're gonna lock her in the basement?
Craig says that when he was there in the 80s before it burned down, when he was in the basement, he moved a dresser that was up against one of the walls, and behind the dresser were shackles that were mounted to the wall. Like, Craig's like, I saw this with my own eyes. That existed in the basement.
No, I hate that.
Right?
I hate that. I'd be like, I'm out. We're out. Roll up. We're going.
Yeah. And then he also said that on the property, there was a small wooden cross with the name Lucy on the cross. And right around it were rocks, so it really looked like a burial site, which, again, is also mentioned in the book. But in the book, they break it down a little further, saying that Lucy was actually pregnant and lost the daughter within a few days of being born. And she had named her daughter Lucy. So that would have been her burial site on the property.
Okay.
Which, that kind of all makes sense. At that time, you didn't necessarily bury somebody in the...
Right.
Yeah, that was common.
Yeah, like you, not in a cemetery, you bury it on the property, especially with like a newborn child.
Yeah, a very young baby. Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, even with what we just discussed with Pamela Vanos in Chicago City Cemetery, it was entirely normal to just be like, well, there's dirt here, and we'll bury here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, someone stole the cross. But Craig, again, remembers it, saw it with his own eyes.
Wow, that's fucked up that somebody'd steal the cross.
Yeah.
Like,
really.
Why?
How do you steal that from like what it could very obviously be like sure, maybe it's a prank, but also maybe it's someone's final resting place, and now you have the only thing that marked it? That's very odd.
Right.
Yeah.
I collect odd stuff.
So another piece of interesting information that Craig shared with me, that we both still have a ton of questions on this, but it's about the fire. And Ashley, maybe you can provide a little bit of additional insight.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who may not have listened to our Paulding Light episode, you're part of your local fire department.
I am. Yeah.
So you might be able just to help us understand the process.
Yeah. So
Craig told me that
I'll
the
just
house...
start with, just like local fire departments, how it works. If you're not familiar with how that process is that most of this area, include like all of Vilas County, with the exception of one township, all fire departments are volunteer. We take trainings that are they're intense, but they're not professional style trainings where you go to like an academy and you learn for a year. This is going to be like 6 months, 2 days a week after work for a couple hours. Learn how to keep ourselves safe. We're very highly trained in the fact that we can do just about anything other fire departments do, but you're responding from your home. You're not sitting at your station.
There's been a ton of times where like we're hanging out and you're like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
While we not be running out the door the very second the page goes off from our station, we're driving from our house to the station to get our trucks, which are just as great as professional trucks, then driving to scene.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of these people have other jobs. Actually, I would say all of them have other jobs. They're like my department has accountants, lumberjacks, electricians, plumbers, carpenters. We all kind of have many different trades that we're in. But we're firemen as well.
Yeah. And honestly, with volunteer, there's a bunch of in Chicago as well, even though there are stations and people that like, shout out all volunteer firefighters, because one time my husband got into a car accident, and thank goodness he accidentally crashed right in front of a volunteer firefighter's home.
Yeah.
And this man came out of his home and helped Adam out of his car because he had a head wound. He was bleeding.
Yeah.
And this volunteer firefighter took, because he had a concussion too. He'd never had the airbag in him before.
Oh, yeah.
So he was stunned and kind of dazed, and this volunteer firefighter helped him get to, help in the hospital.
Right.
So they could, because, you're bleeding from the head, it's bleeding a lot. So this guy really took care of him.
Yeah, and they're so valuable to have. But the reason I'm mentioning the volunteer scenario, so you get the background of when a house is on fire here, it might go another 10 minutes before someone's there, unlike a city environment. And that's not like a fault of ours, it's just the geographics. That's how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then all these people are also in townships with everyone else. So you hear these stories of how things happen pretty easily. Like, as soon as you're done with your fire, you go back to your job. You're like, where'd you go? And you're like, oh, yeah, the LaMonte Mansion's on fire.
Right?
Yeah.
And you all also, it takes longer too because it's such a wide geographical area that you're covering that you might have to drive for 30 minutes to get to the station.
And there's no fire hydrants.
Exactly, yeah.
When you want fire or you want water, we haul a pump down to the lakes if you're near a lake. And we pump water up the hill and put it in like a giant baby pool, basically, like a collapsible pool called a drop tank. So like the water is coming from this drop tank, and the tank is being filled by either a pump if you're lucky enough to be on a lake, or we're tanking water in a fire brigade of trucks going in and out. So this putting a fire out isn't like a city scenario where like, okay, grab the hose and squirt. It doesn't work like that here.
Right.
It's a whole different thing.
Right.
Exactly.
And we sort of already mentioned that this area is not the most navigatable.
No.
No. I can't imagine getting a fire truck down that driveway.
Yeah,
Very frequently we get to calls where we can't get a truck in. So then we have relay pumping, hoses. We have hundreds to thousands of feet of hoses that go down driveways for stuff like this. So
yeah, I can't.
When a house is on fire, you're sometimes getting a 15, 20, 30-minute delay before water is even seen on that flame.
I remember we had one of your friends here in Chicago who's also part of the fire department, or her husband was part of the fire department. And she's looking, she goes, all these buildings are so close together. What if one catches fire? I'm like, well, they can respond a whole lot faster.
Yes.
Just because they're down the street and there's a hydrant out front.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. And that's why...
Because we did that once already.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know there were no fire hydrants up there.
No.
Oh, man, that is...
There's not, like, public water sources in most homes. Like, everyone has their own well. So this is...
Yeah, you're on, like, a
that's
well.
true. Now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, we did have our own... Back when I lived with my parents in Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Makes sense.
So
I
that will
just
give
get
you
so
the
used to fire hydrants.
background of how a fire might have, like, gotten to the point it did in this location.
Well, one thing that we do know is that this was actually a controlled fire. So this was actually put on by the fire department. And when the house burned down on Father's Day, like, it was that controlled fire. And there's actually no official reports of it ever being struck by lightning. I did read some reports in the local newspapers that said that there was a belief that it could have been struck by lightning, but the fire department was still looking into it, and then I never saw a follow-up article. But Ashley, can you kind of explain to us what a controlled burn is and why a fire department would do one?
Oh, we do these pretty frequently. Like I said, we train as much as we can. And a lot of the times there's houses that are, say, abandoned like this, or someone is destroying it for building a new place. So they'll donate the building to us, and we take out the things that are, like, obviously hazardous, like the asbestos, electrical, plumbing, things like that. And we put in, we make sets. So we'll set a certain room on fire. We'll say we'll fill it with, like, straw or hay. And then we have the guys practice like a one-hand search. So, like, when you go in a room and it's completely dark, you can't see anything. it's on fire, it's hot.
Uh-huh.
We do like a left-handed search where you keep your left
Wow.
hand along the entire wall and you search for victims. You don't get practice like
Wow.
that in like a classroom. So practice burns
No,
are
yeah, no.
hugely beneficial, and when we can do them, we'll take that opportunity.
Yeah, and I know.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point.
Another, you
Yeah.
kind of alluded to it a little bit, but it's abandoned houses. It's houses that are not necessarily structurally sound because that's why they're abandoned. Like that could be
Right.
another reason to like just get rid of the house, and then the fire department can benefit from it.
For sure. And then from what I hear, I don't
Yeah,
know for sure what it is, but you get a pretty good tax rebate from like donating your house to a place like that.
That's what I would assume.
Oh, okay. So, like, just to, like, donate it to your... I'm sorry, I know you said this. I just got discombobulated because you donate your house to the fire department,
Yeah.
essentially?
And then you get it back.
Cool.
Like, you get the property back. It's not like we own it now.
Yeah.
We basically,
Exactly, yeah,
we sign
but-
a contract that's like a lease for like one day.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it never occurred to me what good a training atmosphere that would be.
Oh, 100%. It
You
is
know?
the best training that we can get our hands on.
I feel like every few
Yeah.
months you tell me about another controlled burn that you guys are able to do for your
Yeah.
department and all of that.
Yep, between
That's
all the
good.
departments around here, when we do get a house, then like every department's like, okay, there's a practice down in Orlando, and like
Oh,
we pull in
man.
as many firefighters as they can, and you train everything from like your interior searches to trucking water in and out, just practicing dumping tanks, and then we go through EMS and pretend there's like a victim in there, and they'll pull out a body, and then we work on it, and like there's so much we can do with a burn like that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yes, if those are common, it's not a weird thing at all. We burn houses down when we're all a little bit of pyros.
I remember this was a while ago. You texted me a picture. You were doing medical training.
Yeah.
And like a simulation, and you had this like thing on your leg that looked like a big open wound. It was just like this
a moulage kit.
Yeah, but it was the same exact color of your skin.
Yeah, it's like a rubber
no.
sleeve that you put on your leg, and it looks like a cut. But then there's a little pump behind it, and you can like squeeze a little pump of blood out, and yeah, it looks like in my leg, because I'm so like pale. The like white kit looked like it was pretty realistic.
It was so funny when you sent it. I'm just like, wait, why are you sending this to me? First off, I think that you would tell me if you really got injured versus sending a picture.
Yeah, there's
what's
like
happening?
bones sticking out.
But I think that there's a main theory that I have when it comes to the house and the controlled burn and the lightning and everything. And I know you and I talked about this off air, Ashley.
Yeah.
But tell me if you kind of agree with this whole thing. I do think that there is the possibility the house was struck by lightning, but that didn't cause a fire. I think that because that's the story that like basically everyone really knows and talks about. And the fact that the fire department kind of came out and said that we're investigating this, we think it's a possibility. And then with it being abandoned, the lightning could have damaged the house to be to the point where it was so unsafe and unrepairable that it was then a controlled burn.
Yeah, that's definitely very true. Like that fires or a lightning can start a house on fire but not cause it to burn down.
Is there
That
a
makes sense.
point where a fire department can kind of step in and say like this needs to be burned down?
I know a fire department can step in and say this needs to be taken care of. I don't know if they can dictate you need to burn down or you need to destroy it or something. What we can do is have them sign a form that we don't approve safe occupancy.
Okay.
Okay,
So
that backs you up. That makes
it's kind
sense.
of up to them on how they remedy it. But we can say like, as a fire department, we don't allow you to go back in and live here.
Okay. Yeah, like this is not structurally safe.
Yeah, either structurally or
for you to be in
gases
Okay.
or like
Yeah, okay.
Well, the reason I'm asking
like
that
they're-
specifically is because Craig told me that the house was burned down without the owner's permission. That seems weird. I know when you and I talked about it before, you mentioned that they could like ask for this if it potentially deemed unsafe, like depending on kind of their policies within the county. and
Yeah,
that they would reach out to the owners and say, like, we are planning to do this, and they have, like, a certain amount of time to potentially appeal that.
Yeah, like, I really don't know how it all worked, but I can see a scenario going down like, hey, like, you can't be in this house because we don't allow you to live it anymore. A burn would be a great option for you. We can offer this to you. I really don't know how like they enforce it, but I mean, laws change. It's not my exact township. There very well could have been like a statute being like, we will take possession of this property after a certain amount of time. I don't know, but I know that a practice burn would have been a great option for them to do there.
Right. Well, my thought
is then they get their land back.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can rebuild.
My thought with this, and this is just pure speculation on my part, is if that is the case, where the fire department deemed it unsafe, and then for some reason said that, like, yes, this is going to be a controlled burn, maybe because of all the kids breaking into it over and over. I don't really know. Yeah. But maybe they tried to reach out to the Tracys, and the Tracys didn't get that communication. This isn't, you can't just send an email. This is 88. Like, maybe it would have just been a letter in the mail that could have gotten lost. Like,
right.
I wonder if something like that happened where, you know what, maybe they weren't aware of it, but that wasn't because of a lack of following procedure on the fire department. I don't know.
Right. They could have just seen something with, like, the county logo on the outside of the envelope, and they're like, oh, it's on the LaMonte Mansion property. We're not even on that property right now. I'm going to toss that on my kitchen table, when, in fact, it's an incredibly important document. Like, it's not safe for you to go in there.
Right.
For sure.
And another reason why I kind of have this theory is because I actually read a newspaper article from 1988 that actually announced that the control burn was going to happen.
So that happened.
Okay.
Yeah, which they have to do, because what they do is they contact all of the neighbors to say, hey, this is happening. You don't need to call 911. We're here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's always done.
Makes sense. Otherwise, you just get probably 800 911 calls.
Right.
Exactly. So I don't really know quite the situation. I found that very interesting when Craig told me, but I just wonder if, like, kind of everything is true.
So the story I always heard was that there was 2 fires. One of them was lightning, and the other one, it wasn't, like, defined on what it was. So from all the stories put together, it sounds to me like, yes, it was hit by lightning. When houses get hit by lightning, they generally don't just, like, spark and burn. It's more of a smolder, so it will, like, get hit on the roof ridge or something, and then it kind of, the electricity will go through the walls and hit insulation, and, like, all the insulation smolders, and the house just fills with smoke. So
it's like burning paper, where it doesn't necessarily burn, but it just keeps, like, moving up.
Oh, yeah.
It is not always fire with smoke. Like, the whole, there's smoke, there's fire. No, not really. I have been on many, we still call them structure fires, but there's not actual flames. There's hot spots, hot zones, and a lot of smoke. So I'm thinking that it got hit by lightning, that happened, all the insulation got burned up and charred, which makes for a very dangerous home, because once those, like, timbers that are holding the house up, your studs, your everything, get heat exposed to them, they're not structurally sound.
Yeah.
So it can be standing and, like, fall over in a good wind. A summer wind.
Yeah. Oh, boy. A summer wind. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So, like, the story I heard that it was, like, it got hit by lightning, and then it was in this state where it was not safe, and it was, like, all charred, whatever, smoke, something or other. Then a lot of people were going into it, and this is where I'm hearing about these photos were taken from, like, kids and stuff. And then it does make perfect sense where they're like, the town's like, you got to do something about this. Like,
that's what I'm thinking happened.
Yeah. So I don't, and it could be that the same scenario that Craig's talking about, where, like, the town's like, I will help you with this by giving you this burn setup scenario where you can get the tax rebate, we take care of your house, you don't have to pay for demo, mission solved.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's, like, a good deal.
Yeah.
If you're planning on just totally rebuilding your home.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't even remodel.
Let them burn it down.
If it's not even safe enough to remodel.
Yeah.
Hey, why not?
Yeah, just have them burn it down, build something new. It's a good option.
So Craig went on to tell me that he was very weary of the story told in the Carver effect.
Yep.
As I mentioned, there were a lot of holes.
Which
in Carver's
story of the? Oh, the land deed.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't remember if the book The Carver Effect also covered what happened to Arnold.
It did, yes.
With the organ.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It did.
'cause that was
Okay,
his son-in-law.
okay.
Arnold was his.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. All right. Thank you.
But
Excuse me.
as a whole, he's weary of it. But like we already pointed out some of the holes in Jonathan Carver's story with the land deed. But Craig didn't flat out say he didn't believe Von Bober's story. But he said that he was very cautious to believe every detail of it. And I think that's
Yeah.
fair. I think that we've all come across many
Yeah.
pieces of this story that were told that were either slightly incorrect or just didn't have the evidence to prove it false or true. I've also, I will say, I read a lot of articles in local papers that are not a fan of Von Bober and his stories with the house. Yeah, the local newspaper wasn't a fan.
Not a fan.
No. And
That's fair.
Craig definitely believes that the property is haunted. He's had many experiences while investigating there. One of the most notable he mentioned was when he was with a team of 3 or 4 other investigators, there were small pebbles being thrown at them. And when they started to investigate, more pebbles were being tossed. They appeared to be falling onto them. And the house had already burned at this point. So there's not really much around them other than trees and the stone foundation.
Pebbles falling from the skies, but
Yes.
was there even any tree cover?
They're not right
Did
in the
he
area
mention?
that they were. So
Wow.
they,
Okay.
because since the house had burned, it's basically a big
Right.
open pit. There's a couple chimney stacks left. There's some of the brick foundation left, but it's a pretty big open area where this 20-room mansion was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was saying that like his first thought was like, is there a bird dropping pebbles on us?
Right.
But there was no place where they could
Yeah.
like easily be over them without being seen and like flying.
Yeah, that's where I first went to too. Like Occam's razor, like okay, it was a tree coverage and like angry squirrels, like but it sounds like there was like nothing above
Yeah.
this team's head.
Yeah.
And then they said that they started tossing pebbles into kind of the pit of the foundation where the basement was. And
Okay.
the pebbles would come fly up back at them from the basement.
Oh. That's weird.
Right? So he's like, that's just something I
don't
can't
know if I
explain. It was one of the weirdest experiences. Like actually having things move and be thrown at them was a new thing for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a new thing kind of that we're hearing about these spirits in this house. Like, because we've heard that one like allegedly spoke. We've heard there was one that was a full apparition that
Right.
like, shot at, and now we have some sort of spirit energy that can move items in
Yeah.
the living world.
That's powerful.
Yeah, one thing I have noticed is, as you were exactly just saying, all of the stories are so different when they come to the hauntings, which it's not impossible by any means, but if you look into a lot of other haunted locations, there's at least some sort of trend that's often seen that we're not seeing here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of different like the only things that have been consistent so far are like disembodied voices and flickering lights.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
Which I
also
feel like are both
I can tell
I think
you
those are both hallmarks of hauntings.
right, but I can also tell you, you're in northern Wisconsin. You might not have the best electrical at that time frame.
Yeah.
A storm could
Yeah,
easily
your power
flicker
might
your
not be
lights,
great.
some strong winds. And I will also
Yeah.
say, and I know, Ashley, you can also contest to this. When you live on a lake, you can hear people talking across from the other side of the lake because the sound just moves
Right.
so
Yeah.
clearly.
They sound
through there.
like they're right next to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, And I'm not saying that none of that ever happened. It is a good possibility it all did. But there are also external explanations that could be involved.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we usually say when we do these paranormal episodes that, like, we're hopeful skeptics.
I desperately want to believe.
I don't want to speak for both of us.
But I need an experience for me to believe, and I have never had one.
Yeah, I'm a hopeful skeptic, but I have a threshold that needs to be met for me to get on your team, and my bar might be a little too high. I don't know. I need to see, like, something like the LaMonte Saw, like something that's like full-bodied, worth shooting at, scared.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I would believe. If pebbles fell on me, like if one flew back out, I'd be like, that's very weird, and I'd probably think about it like twice a week for the rest of my life. But I don't know if I would be like, it's haunted.
Exactly. Yeah. And at one point, Craig actually went and saw help from a clairvoyant to help cleanse him, because he actually felt like there was a potential spirit of a young girl who followed him after he left Summerwind.
That's eerie.
Yeah, and he didn't say specifically like what happened. Like, I don't think there were specific examples, but it was just this heavy feeling that he had where he felt the need to go be cleansed and get rid of the spirit.
Maybe it was because he saw the cross, or like he knew the cross at that point had been taken, and
Maybe.
like the spirit, I mean, it's a final resting place, you know? Like, that would be something that I would find incredibly disturbing if I knew that there was like a burial place that had been violated right by where I was. I'd be like, I'm probably gonna have to talk to somebody who can sage me.
Well, what's
down.
so interesting about that idea, because I kind of had the same thought as you. When I was talking to Greg, he didn't know the story of Lucy having a daughter who died.
Oh.
He knew about Lucy.
Oh.
He believed that grave potentially was hers, not the child's. And
and being a child's grave would make more sense.
Exactly. And so I told him about the book.
Too.
I told him, like, you can go check this out. This is where I found the information. But, like, all of this still lines up with everything that you're telling me. And we both kind of agreed, like, ooh, this is very interesting. But it's a more interesting thought to me. Like, even though the baby is said to have been days old, what if her spirit was kind of formed itself in a slightly older version? I don't know how that works.
Maybe she's growing up,
but
maybe beyond the veil, you grow up just slower, you know?
Yeah, I don't really know, but I found that really interesting that he called out specifically the spirit of a young girl, because he wasn't aware of that part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
It kind of solidifies like the possible truth in things.
That's how I felt. Yeah. Something that also fits in the story, which I think kind of fits more so in what the housekeepers potentially saw, because I have a whole theory in what the housekeepers saw. But he said that he spoke with a woman who lived on the other side of West Bay Lake, which is a very large lake. And one day, as a young child, he didn't know how old she was. But he said when he talked to her a handful of years ago, she was in her 90s. So we're assuming quite young, maybe like 10, 12 years old at this point, which would have put her in what, the 40s to 50s probably at that time. Little somewhere around there. We don't really know. We're purely speculating. But this woman told Craig that one day she was out with a couple of friends on their little rowboat fishing when a big storm hit. And they started to make their way to the shore just for safety. They weren't going towards their house, just kind of whatever shore is closest. And happened to be right in front of the LaMonte Mansion. And as they approached the shore, they saw a woman who was waving at them to, like, come in and come inside. And she led them up into the house. House is abandoned at this point. And I believe he said that like she kind of went off into another room and just never came back. Like she just disappeared. And the kids just kind of rode out the storm on the inside of the house.
Oh, wow.
And at this point, the house was abandoned. Again, I said I don't know what year it is, but he said it was definitely not occupied at the time. But the house was like spotless inside. No dust. It was fully furnished. There was no damage to the property. It was as if someone was currently living there.
That's not... That makes sense.
Right? Yeah. That's very odd.
And this is also discussed in The Haunted Northwoods, in the book by Tom Holitz. And he expands on the story, saying that the kids saw a painting above one of the fireplaces that looked exactly like the woman who would have waved them to shore and let them inside the house.
Okay.
And it's believed that this woman was Lucy.
Okay.
I will say, I honestly don't know if I buy this part of the story for a couple reasons.
Okay.
If this did happen in like the 50s, 60s, the LaMontes would have abandoned the house 30 years previously, 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
like...
It would be like dilapidated,
yeah.
kinda.
But that's also kind of part of the story, is that like it should have been dilapidated, but it wasn't.
Should have been, yeah, exactly.
But
yeah.
the thing that makes me believe it less is the fact that Lucy was Lamonte's mistress.
Yeah.
By all accounts that we've been able to figure out.
Right.
And his wife's name was Helen. So why would he have a portrait of his mistress above the fireplace and not his wife?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as soon as you were at the beginning of this sentence, and as soon as you said, if Lucy was Lamonte's mistress, I was like, wait, those kids are saying they saw a painting above the fireplace. Why would he hang a portrait?
That's the weird part to me.
I mean, that takes balls, man.
Right?
Oh my god, the audacity. But the audacity.
I will also say that maybe his wife and his mistress looked alike, and maybe he just had a type.
That's super.
Yeah, also accurate.
So, like...
Yeah, maybe he just liked, maybe he had a type, yeah. Also, maybe, you know, like, whoever painted it was just, like...
not a good painter.
I don't know. Not a good painter, yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Maybe it just looks like a mixture of the both of them.
Right.
Right, exactly, yeah. He's like, this is all the ladies in your life that you love. Here you go, hanging above your fireplace.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about this story, in reality, to me at least, is that not long after, either a few days or a week or two later, the kids, again, were out fishing. Again, it began to rain, and they knew that they could seek shelter at the mansion, so they started to make their way to shore, and they saw the woman again. Mm-hmm. And as they got to the shore, or near the shore, this woman started waving at them to, like, get down and hide.
Oh.
And a few moments later, a neighbor began firing his gun. Supposedly he was drunk and angry at a storm and started shooting his gun into the air.
Well, I mean, that's how you get around thunderstorms.
I'm saying, it doesn't sound super uncommon to me.
That's how we do it here.
I'll say,
that's how we do it here in America.
How many times growing up did we hear guns just going off in the woods for hunting or target shooting or whatever reason?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have shot at things in my yard. It's not like, I'm not saying we're all picks, we shoot stuff, but like, okay, we had a porcupine the other day.
Illegal.
We had to kill it. It got shot in my yard.
Those things get big. Get big.
And I had 4 dogs trying to eat it.
Yeah, like sometimes you just need to do what you need to do. And we grew up in an area where we talked about this so much in the tree stand murders episode. Hunting is so important to the people up there and to the ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's necessary up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, it doesn't seem crazy to me that some drunk guy's shooting off his gun into the air at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely not. It doesn't shock me at all.
But, like, part of this is, it seemed like this woman was telling the kids, like, don't get close. Like, there's danger
Yeah.
And like potentially this woman could have saved their lives by telling them not to get onto shore. So I found that story particularly interesting when Craig was talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is pretty compelling.
Yeah, and like I've been to Summerwind. We've mentioned this. I've been there plenty of times. Ashley, you've been there a lot. Yeah. I personally never experienced anything. Have you?
I don't think I honestly have either. I think it's more of like the eerie feeling, but that's like why you go to these things. Like,
see, I found it peaceful.
Yeah.
16,
I didn't find it
17,
eerie.
Yeah, but it was like, let's go get spooked out, and then like someone steps on a stick and it snaps, and oh my gosh, and everyone jumps.
Right.
Like, those are the stories I have. I can't say that there's any kind of particular instance where like I felt a spirit, a person. I felt a being, as someone was watching me. The neighbors probably watched us, and like I remember one time like they turned on a big light at like a house down the road, and I'm like, oh crap, we gotta go.
Snitches.
Yeah, but it was
snitches out here,
as they probably should be watching the property, because I was 100%
right.
So we were sneaking on, so that's fair.
They were probably like, hello,
it's like,
neighbor.
Those damn kids again.
These kids.
I can honestly say I've never caused any damage. I never harmed anybody there. It was a very innocent thing, and that's probably why it wasn't like people were getting arrested on the daily. It's the spooky aspect of it is based mainly on these stories. I've heard these stories forever. I've heard about the gunshots in the kitchen. I've heard about the deed I've heard always like in the foundation, buried in the rocks.
Yeah, the story when we were kids was that you're supposed to take a brick out of that foundation and maybe you'll find the deed behind it. And that if you then take the brick home, you're supposed to die within a year. I'm looking at 2 bricks right now that I have in my apartment.
Yeah, so I might have had a little bit of thievery.
So what's your deadline? Bricks. Hold on.
It's been like 20 years.
Hold on. What are your guys? Okay, all right. You guys are good. Okay.
No, we're fine.
I'm like, hold on.
In fact,
what are your deadlines?
I owned a house for a while that I was pouring a front concrete stoop on it, and I needed to fill it with something. And I remember the contractor like, do you have like these cinder blocks or anything laying around that we can fill in here to so we don't use as much concrete and mix it up in this wheelbarrow? And I've got 10 of these bricks that are in my garage that I've had from Summerwind. So they're in the porch of this undisclosed home in my area.
That is awesome.
So you sold it. The new owners probably have no idea.
Oh yeah. Though this has been sold multiple times since then. So so far no one's had any curses. Nothing happened. But
we'll keep an eye on it.
The stories are still so intriguing to the fact that if it wasn't illegal at this point, I'd be like, yeah, let's go. And it's a beautiful summer night. Because the spooky feeling is not going to go away. The stories are always going to be there. Regardless of if they're proven wrong, there's always going to be Joe Schmo down the road saying, that's not true. I know a guy that was involved in that whole deed scenario. That was my uncle, Joe Smith from 1845.
Right.
But that's why we do this stuff. And that's why those stories are told over and over, because it's just cool.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's also a small town. There's not much else to do.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a small town, but we also, part of it is we gotta keep these stories alive, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Pardon me.
As much as a lot of these stories are either untrue or exaggerated or whatever they are.
Even if they're tall tales.
It's fun. And I had
It's incredibly local.
Yes.
And it gets you interested in your, local area. I see no problem with that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a story you should pass on and just tell your kid not to get caught.
Yeah. I encourage the storytelling. Of course, everyone be safe. Don't trespass.
Right.
Don't set houses on fire. Probably not steal bricks. I'm a bad influence.
Yeah.
I can't condone what we did at all.
Yeah. No.
Especially as I get older, I'm like, that wasn't necessarily the best idea.
Right.
But
it's never the best idea if I'm coming forward on it, so I'm not gonna offer an opinion here.
Right.
I'm just gonna say don't get caught.
See, I want to do an actual paranormal investigation up there. I had such a good time talking with Craig, and he said that there's the potential that if he's up there, he'll try to give me a phone call to join him. And I really hope that happens.
Like, there are owners of the property. They do give people some permission to, like, certain people. There, if you want to get involved in stuff like this, there are ways to do it. There's groups like Craig that got into doing stuff like this. Other areas have, I'm sure, other houses, other lore. Like, you can do things the right way and still be into the cool stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I would love to find a paranormal group to go do things with and go to things like this. I know that there's a ton in Chicago. I just need to figure it out. But I would love to kind of have like a fun side project thing where I do paranormal investigation. I would really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much, like, Chicago-wise, like, you're going to probably get tons of specific groups for specific stuff, like gang-related crime, you know? Maybe half of those groups are going to be trying to find Al Capone locations and that kind of thing.
Hey,
like,
if anyone's listening, I want in.
You know, devil in...
yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you... Let us know, especially if you are doing an H.H. Holmes one. I would be so there.
Yeah, the murder castle's a parking lot now, or an empty lot, but you never know. I've been there.
I'd go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an empty lot.
So I guess, like, my bottom line of all these stories is keep telling them. I encourage that. Look up the history and find out facts, and it's just a fun thing to do. But I'm not going to say this is not true and ghosts aren't real. We don't know that stuff, and that's why we research and are intrigued.
Yeah, and that's a huge reason I wanted to do this episode, because some of the stories seem quite accurate. Some seem a little outlandish. But if you tell them, like, with the, like, here's what this person's story is, here's what this person's story is, it's so interesting to kind of see that evolution and to have the story that we have now.
Yes.
And I feel like after talking to Craig, I have a much better understanding of the history of Summerwind. Growing up, I think most of the stories that we've kind of referenced, it's been in relation to what was in the Carver effect, because we were kind of the next generation. And that I honestly don't think that the Carver effect has a whole lot of truth, in my personal opinion. I think that things absolutely happened to the Hinshaw family. I absolutely believe that, and I think...
And whether it be paranormal or mental health, or it just kind of getting in your own head because those stories were told to them as well.
Yeah, and like also what really interests me, which I almost forgot about it because I didn't write it in my script, but I briefly mentioned it earlier, the story of this woman that we just talked about with the lake, in conjunction with the story of what the housekeepers saw. They very specifically said that they saw a woman out in the grounds, and they kind of described this woman with long black hair walking around. And that also kind of coincides with what the Hinshaws saw. But what if, this is a total what if, the woman that they saw was actually Lucy and she was living? Because she she was locked in the basement. Like, what if she was actually really a secret and at some point did have access to, like, walk out and no one really knew that she was there? You can keep someone hidden in a 20-room mansion probably fairly easily.
That's a pretty good point.
And then when you talk about the Hinshaws and what they saw in that attic, what if that happened? Because it seems like the daughter who went in there, who I was saying, like, has a lawyer representing her, she saw something. She was terrified.
She saw something.
She still
she has legal representation
talks about it and brings the lawyer with. So I do think that, like, there are bits and pieces here that are factual, but I think it might have been exaggerated in the book.
Yeah, the complex childhood trauma of all of that. Right. Like, she saw something. She literally has legal representation. She saw something that made her engage a lawyer.
And one thing I actually...
I couldn't believe her.
I think I accidentally missed it in my script just a little bit earlier here. Another thing Craig told me was during one of his investigations, he was using the spirit box, which is, for those of you who might not know what a spirit box is, it basically cycles through radio stations very quickly. And the goal of it is to hopefully get some sort of communication that is a word or a sentence or something that continues during those sweeps. So you're not actually hearing like the radio host or the DJ talking on one station. It's covering a handful, but you still get one word or a sentence from it. And while he was doing this, he heard the spirit box say that they were Lucy and saying specifically, "I'm dead and I'm your friend."
Oh, okay, that's a pretty bold sentence.
Well, it makes me think a lot, because if you think about, okay, talking about that 9-year-old woman who had the story from when she was a kid, like, what if that actually was Lucy and Lucy was trying to help and then trying to keep her safe by saying, hey, don't come to the shore right now. This guy's shooting his gun next door. Like, that all kind of fits in that same general narrative, which I find really interesting. But the house changing sizes in the book doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what puts things into question for me.
I don't want to be a hater. Craig and I'm sure his team probably have really good equipment, but I kind of think spirit boxes are garbage.
I have very mixed feelings about a spirit box.
I would, to believe that, Craig, once again, I can't highlight enough how much I respect your investigation and team. I would have to hear that audio. Yeah. I would have to hear that audio track played for me. Yeah. Because I have never heard... they may have higher tech equipment, but I've seen many spirit boxes used on many different paranormal investigations, and it's always like, code.
Yeah. You know? Well, that's why it's more important you want a multiple syllable word or a sentence. Otherwise, I agree. Like, if you hear one word that's like 1 to 2 syllables, that could have been a radio host from one station. So that's my only thing with the spirit box. Like, the pebbles I can't explain, and not to hate. I just don't like spirit boxes. I get the idea of it and having to switch those stations super quick to get those longer words. That's why I find it so interesting. But as the skeptic that I am, I think there's even the potential that at times those stations switching so fast, it can just seem like the radio hosts are saying a sentence, but it really is all these individual ones that just kind of say something. Yeah. So I am skeptical of a spirit box as well, but I found that just incredibly interesting because it does very much fit in that same narrative of everything we're talking about.
Right.
It does.
But that is really kind of all that we have for Summerwind. Kelly, Ashley, what do you think?
I don't know. I feel like there's great coverage of it. There's a lot of details that I didn't know. I thought I knew a bunch about it, but all these little details come out. But I love hearing how the stories that we hear now originated with something. Mm-hmm. And those facts happened. Like, there are things that have happened that are either eerie or maybe somewhat illegal, and that built into the game of telephone that turned into what we do today.
Yeah, it was fun researching this.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I learned so much as well.
Yeah. And I think I said my piece as far as just like the only thing that like I'm like red flagging on it is I'm like hating on the spirit box. Otherwise, I think there's definitely some kind of energy in this acreage, like, because I think it depends on the type of person you are, the experience you have, because we have the story from Kathy, the local, who always said she felt a great sense of calm there. Mm-hmm. We had the kids finding refuge there, but we also have the LaMontes who were fleeing from the home, the Hinshaws, and, you know. So I definitely believe there's something happening in the vibrational area there, but like I said, my bar might be too high for... But I am just a skeptic. I do still want to... I want a pendulum. Like, just give me anything, and I'm willing to blow over like a summer wind, like we said.
Right.
And to say it goes surreal. Just show me. I need... Tell me.
Yeah, I need to go do that investigation myself so that I can
Right.
be more of a believer
wanna
than
see
a
it.
skeptic.
Right.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Well, thank you, Ashley, so much for joining us. This was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. It's kind of a
Thank
long
you,
episode,
Ash.
but it's worth it.
No,
Yeah.
this is fun. Yeah, this is totally worth it. And we totally understand now, like, why they did a controlled burn, you know?
Yeah.
But, one other thing I forgot to capture in the wrap-up was that I just wanted to point out that every time we do paranormal episodes, we have tech issues.
Oh my God.
It happens
Have tech
every time.
issues.
My
It
computer
happens
tried to
every
self-destruct.
single...
Yeah, your computer struggled
morning-
with this one.
Yeah, I rode struggle bus
All
hard
of
on the way
us-
here.
Yeah, all of us had tech issues. All of us had, like, phone calls that came in the middle, interrupting the recording. I'm just saying, and that happened when we were doing the Haunting Lodge, too.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
so many issues during the Haunting Lodge. Like, so many issues.
So...
Ashley, you saw me. I was at your house
So-
editing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you all for listening to Have You Heard About This Case. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow our show on Spotify. You can also now find us on YouTube at Have You Heard About This Case, on Instagram at Have You Heard About This Case, and on TikTok at HYHATC. And then you can also email us at haveyouheardaboutThisCase@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.